It is 3 in the morning, and the world outside is still and silent. But in the quiet theater of your mind, a frantic performance is underway. This is the Midnight Symphony, an orchestra of thoughts you did not ask for, playing a composition of yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's fears. Each thought is a note, sharp and insistent, a memory replayed for the 100th time, a conversation rehearsed in endless variations, a catastrophic what-if scenario spun out of the thinnest air. The room is dark, but your mind is lit with the harsh glare of anxieties. There is a profound loneliness in this experience, a sense that you are trapped in a chamber of echoes, wrestling with phantoms that the daylight seems to hold at bay. This state, this churning of the soul, is often mislabeled as simple sleeplessness, but it is something deeper, more pervasive. It is the signature of overthinking. It is not the same as productive problem solving, which moves forward towards a solution. This is a wheel, spinning in the mud of rumination, digging itself deeper with every turn. It is a form of self-generated suffering, a mental friction that drains our energy, steals our joy, and leaves us exhausted before the day has even begun. In our modern world, a world of constant connection and relentless pressure, this wheel spins faster than ever, fueled by the demand to be more, to do more, to have more, leaving us feeling overwhelmed and fundamentally stuck. But what if this exhaustion is not a modern invention? What if this struggle is not a personal failure, but a fundamental aspect of the human condition, recognized and addressed by wise minds for thousands of years? What if there was a path, not to fight this frantic mind into submission, not to wage war against your own thoughts, but to understand them, to change your relationship with them, to find a stillness that exists, not in the absence of thought, but in the space behind it? This is the promise of an ancient wisdom, a gentle guidance offered by the teachings of Buddhism. It is a lamp offered to us in the deep night of the mind, not to banish the shadows, but to illuminate them so that we may finally see them for what they are, and in seeing, find our way to peace. We have named the storm that rages in the quiet hours, the internal tempest we call overthinking. But to truly understand its power, we must first learn to distinguish its sound from all the other noises in the mind. We must map its currents and understand its nature, not as a mysterious force, but as a tangible, definable pattern. This is the first crucial step toward finding the eye of the storm. The mind is designed to think, just as the heart is designed to beat. Thinking is a tool, a brilliant instrument that allows us to solve problems, to create, to learn from the past, and plan for the future. It is the architect of our world. When you sit down to fix a broken appliance, you think. You assess the problem, recall what you know, formulate a hypothesis, and test it. This is linear, productive, and has a purpose. It moves from question to answer. Overthinking, however, is not a tool. It is a trap. It is the architect of prisons. It does not move forward. It moves in circles. It takes the raw material of a problem and, instead of building a solution, it builds a cage. This cage has 2 primary walls, built from the same material but facing in opposite directions. The first wall is rumination. This is the act of endlessly replaying the past. It is the mind as a broken record, stuck on a painful groove. You replay the awkward conversation from yesterday, dissecting every word, every silence, cringing at your own perceived inadequacy. You revisit a past failure, not to learn a lesson, but to bathe in the acidic waters of regret. Rumination is a historian obsessed with a single, painful chapter, reading it aloud day and night, hoping that by sheer repetition, the outcome might somehow change. But it never does. The story is already written. All this repetition accomplishes is the deepening of the emotional wound, the reinforcement of a negative self-image. It is a form of self-punishment disguised as analysis. It feels like you are trying to understand, but you are merely re-experiencing the pain over and over, strengthening the neural pathways of suffering until it becomes a well-worn road in your mind, easy to travel and difficult to leave. The second wall of the cage is worry. If rumination is obsession with the past, worry is a frantic rehearsal for a disastrous future. It is the mind as a catastrophist, writing scripts for tragedies that have not yet occurred and may never occur. You have a presentation next week. A thinking mind would prepare, research, and practice. A worrying mind, however, casts you in a play where you forget your lines, your colleagues laugh, and you lose your job. It takes a single possibility and inflates it into an inevitability. It creates 1,000 branching paths of potential failure and forces you to walk down every single one. Worry feels like a form of preparation, a kind of protective vigilance. The mind whispers a lie. If I worry enough, if I anticipate every possible negative outcome, I will not be caught off guard. I will be safe. But this is an illusion. You are not preparing, you are practicing failure. You are flooding your nervous system with the stress hormones of a disaster that exists only in your imagination. You are living the emotional reality of 100 different failures, all in the hope of avoiding one. The price of this supposed protection is the complete sacrifice of your present peace. The symptoms of living inside this cage are not just mental, they are profoundly physical. An overthinking mind is a body in a constant state of low-grade alert. The shoulders inch their way up towards the ears, tightening into knots of solid tension. The jaw clenches, a silent grind that continues even in sleep. Breathing becomes shallow, a series of short, anxious sips of air, never the deep, restorative belly breath that signals safety to the nervous system. Headaches bloom behind the eyes, a direct result of the relentless cognitive strain. And most of all, there is a deep, pervasive exhaustion. It is the paradox of overthinking. You do nothing, yet you are tired all the time. This is because your brain, which consumes an enormous amount of the body's energy, is running a marathon without end. It never rests, never recharges. This mental fatigue bleeds into every other aspect of life. Your focus shatters. Simple tasks feel monumental. Decision-making becomes a form of torture. What should I have for dinner? The question triggers a cascade of second-guessing, pros and cons, potential regrets. This is decision paralysis, the state of being so overwhelmed by the mental noise of options and outcomes that you simply freeze, unable to move in any direction. Irritability simmers just below the surface, because your capacity to cope, your emotional reserves, have been utterly depleted by the internal symphony. Why? Why does our mind, this marvel of evolution, so easily fall into such a self-destructive pattern? The answer is both simple and profound. Our brains are running on ancient software in a modern world. The human brain evolved over millennia in an environment of immediate physical threat. It developed a powerful negativity bias, a tendency to pay more attention to and give more weight to negative experiences and potential dangers. For our ancestors, the one who obsessed over the rustle in the grass, mistaking it for a predator, was more likely to survive than the one who blissfully ignored it. This hyper-vigilant, problem-seeking mind was a feature, not a bug. It kept us alive. But today, for most of us, the physical predators are gone. The threats we face are now largely psychological, social, and abstract. We are not worried about a tiger in the bushes. We are worried about an unanswered email, a vague comment from our boss, a curated image on social media, the state of the world, our financial future. Our brain, using its ancient operating system, cannot tell the difference. It treats a perceived social slight with the same alarm bells as a life or death threat. It latches onto these abstract problems, and, because they often have no immediate, simple solution, it does the only thing it knows how to do: It spins the wheel. It ruminates. It worries. It tries to solve an unsolvable equation. And the friction of that effort creates the heat of anxiety and the exhaustion of overthinking. So it is crucial to understand this with compassion. Your tendency to overthink is not a personal failing. It is not a sign of weakness. It is the legacy of your ancestors, a survival mechanism that is now working in overdrive in a world it was not designed for. This understanding leads us to the most vital step in this entire journey, the very first gate on the path to freedom: recognition. You cannot solve a problem you do not know you have. You cannot put down a burden you do not realize you are carrying. There is an old story of a man who walked through his village every day with a large, heavy stone upon his back. He was so accustomed to its weight, so used to the ache in his shoulders and the strain in his legs, that he no longer even noticed it. It was simply a part of him, the price of walking through the world. His pace was slow, his face was etched with a permanent grimace of effort, but he had long ago forgotten the cause. One day, a visitor to the village saw him and, with genuine curiosity, asked, "Sir, why do you carry that heavy stone on your back?" The man stopped. The question pierced through the fog of his habit. For the first time in years, he became aware of the stone, truly aware of its crushing weight, of the way it bent his spine and stole his breath. He looked at the stranger, then looked at the stone as if seeing it for the first time, and with a sudden, shocking clarity, he realized a simple truth he had forgotten. He could put it down, and so he did. He shrugged the stone from his shoulders, and it fell to the earth with a heavy thud. He stood up straight, feeling a lightness he thought was lost forever. He was not a different man, but he was a free man. We are all, in some way, this man. The stone is our overthinking. We have carried it for so long, we have become so identified with its weight that we mistake it for a part of ourselves. The constant mental chatter, the background hum of anxiety, the familiar ache of regretting, believe this is just what it feels like to be us. To name it, to look at it directly and say, this is it, this is overthinking, this is the stone, is the moment the stranger asks the question. It is the moment of mindfulness, of seeing clearly what is actually here. This act of recognition, of labeling the experience without judgment, is not a small thing, it is everything. It creates a space between you and the thought pattern. In that space, freedom is born. You are no longer the storm. You are the one who is noticing the storm. And once you have named this internal storm, this restless symphony, once you have called it by its true name, you can begin to learn its rhythms. You can begin to see that it is not you, but a visitor in your mind, a very loud, very persistent visitor. A visitor that the Buddhist masters gave a very fitting name, the monkey mind. We have given a name to the ceaseless internal chatter, this overthinking that robs us of our peace. We have seen it as a stone we carry unconsciously. But to truly grasp its character, Buddhist wisdom offers us a metaphor so powerful, so uncannily accurate, that it has been used for over 2,000 years. It invites us to visualize our own mind as a wild, untrained monkey. Picture a vast jungle, dense with trees. This jungle is your mind, and the trees are your thoughts. And swinging frantically through this jungle is the monkey. He is never still. For a moment, he is on the branch of a memory, chattering about something you said 10 years ago. Then, in a flash, he leaps to the branch of a future fear, screeching about a disaster that might happen next week. Before you can even catch your breath, he has jumped again, this time to the branch of a to-do list, then to the branch of a random song lyric, then to a sudden, inexplicable feeling of sadness. His movement is erratic, purposeless, and constant. He is not going anywhere. He is simply moving for the sake of moving, driven by an inexhaustible and anxious energy. This is the monkey mind. It is the part of our consciousness that is untamed, reactive, and forever restless. It is the source of the midnight symphony. To truly understand this monkey, to work with it, we must observe its fundamental characteristics, its three primary drives. The first, and most powerful, is craving. The monkey is always reaching for something. His eyes dart around the jungle, looking for the next piece of sweet fruit, the next shiny object. He craves pleasure, stimulation, and novelty. In our modern world, this translates to the constant desire for more. We get a promotion, and for a fleeting moment, there is satisfaction. But almost immediately, the monkey is looking for the next promotion. We buy a new gadget, and the momentary thrill of ownership quickly fades as the monkey starts craving the newer, better model. This craving extends beyond the material. The monkey craves validation, reaching for likes on social media like a handful of berries. It craves pleasant sensations and seeks to avoid discomfort at all costs. It is a creature of insatiable appetite, living in a perpetual state of wanting. This drive ensures that the mind is always leaning forward into the future, anticipating the next source of gratification, and therefore never content with what is right here, right now. The second characteristic, born directly from the first, is dissatisfaction. Because the objects of its craving are impermanent, the monkey's happiness is always fleeting. The moment he gets the sweet fruit he so desperately wanted, he takes a bite, and the pleasure is already beginning to fade. He might eat the whole thing, but the satisfaction is gone before the last bite is swallowed. He is left with a sticky residue of disappointment and the renewed, urgent search for the next fruit. This is the essence of what in Buddhism is called dukkha, the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness. It is the feeling of, "Is this all there is?" that haunts us, even in our moments of success. The monkey mind is constitutionally incapable of being content. Its nature is to find fault, to see what is lacking, to focus on the one wilted leaf on an otherwise healthy branch. This is why a day can be 90% positive, but our mind will latch onto the 10% that went wrong, chewing on it, dissecting it, allowing it to color the entire experience. This inherent dissatisfaction ensures that even when life is calm, the monkey will create problems, generating its own turbulence, simply because it does not know how to be still. The third characteristic is constant distraction. The monkey has the attention span of a lightning flash. The slightest noise, the gentlest breeze, a passing butterfly, any of these is enough to completely divert his attention. He may be focused on a particular branch, but then a distant sound pulls him away, and he forgets entirely what he was doing. Our modern world is a jungle built to exploit this very weakness. Our phones buzz and ping, each notification a sudden noise that sends the monkey leaping in a new direction. An endless scroll of news and social media presents a billion passing butterflies, each one promising a momentary distraction. We sit down to focus on a single, important task, and within minutes, the monkey has leaped to checking email, then to a news website, then to wondering what to have for lunch, then to a memory of a childhood friend. We are pulled from the present moment again and again, not by major events, but by 1,000 tiny, insignificant distractions. This constant state of distraction means we rarely give our full presence to anything, not to our work, not to our conversations, not to our own lives. We live in a state of perpetual partial attention, which leaves us feeling fragmented, ineffective, and disconnected from our own experience. Now, here is the most important question in this entire exploration. In this story, who are you? For most of us, our unconscious assumption is that we are the monkey. We believe that its frantic chatter is our voice, its anxieties are our identity, its cravings are our will. We are so completely identified with the stream of thoughts that we cannot imagine any other way of being. We think, I am anxious, I am angry, I am a worrier. This is the fundamental error, the great mistake that perpetuates our suffering. the wisdom of Buddhism suggests a radical alternative. You are not the monkey. You are the awareness that is watching the monkey. You are the silent, spacious consciousness in which the monkey's antics take place. You are the sky, and the thoughts are merely the clouds. The goal, therefore, is not to kill the monkey. To attempt to do so would be to wage a futile and violent war against a part of yourself. This is impossible and only creates more suffering. The goal is to gently, patiently, and compassionately train the monkey. It is to change your relationship with it, to move from unconscious identification to conscious observation. The goal is to become the calm master of the house, who can lovingly guide the wild pet, rather than being the frantic owner who is dragged all over the neighborhood by an unruly leash. To understand the folly of fighting the monkey, consider the ancient parable of the tar monkey. A farmer, tired of a mischievous monkey stealing his fruit, devises a trap. He covers a scarecrow in thick, sticky tar. The monkey comes along, and seeing this silent figure in the field, becomes enraged. He shouts at it, but the tar baby doesn't respond. The monkey's anger boils over, and he decides to teach it a lesson. He swings his right hand and punches the tar baby. His hand gets stuck fast. Now truly furious, he punches it with his left hand. It too becomes stuck. Desperate and enraged, he kicks it with his right foot, then his left foot. Both become hopelessly mired in the tar. In a final, desperate act, he headbutts the figure, and now his entire body is glued to the trap, completely immobilized. The farmer comes and collects him easily. We are this monkey, and our own turbulent thoughts are the tar baby. When a painful thought arises, our first instinct is to fight it, to punch it with anger and aversion. I hate this feeling, go away. But this mental punch only gets us stuck. The thought seems to stick to us even more. We struggle harder, resisting with all our might, and in doing so, we become more and more entangled until we are completely immobilized by our own resistance. The struggle itself is the trap. The wisdom lies not in the frantic punching, but in the non-reactive seeing. It is in the ability to see the tar baby, to see the difficult thought, and to not engage it, to not add a second layer of struggle and resistance on top of it. This is the beginning of training the monkey, learning to pause, to breathe, and to observe without impulsive reaction. But to do this effectively, we must first understand precisely why the monkey's antics, why this endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction causes us such profound suffering. This leads us to the bedrock of the Buddha's teaching, the first noble truth. Having met the restless monkey within our own mind, and having observed its frantic, endless dance of craving and dissatisfaction, we must now face the inevitable result of its performance. We must look directly at the feeling that this restlessness produces. It is a feeling of friction, of being fundamentally ill at ease, a subtle but persistent hum of anxiety that underlies even our best moments. It is the exhaustion of the spinning wheel. The Buddha gave this experience a name. It is the first of his four noble truths, the cornerstone of his entire teaching. The name is dukkha. This ancient Pali word, dukkha, is often translated into English simply as suffering, but this translation is tragically incomplete. It can conjure images of intense physical pain or deep, agonizing grief, and while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and much more relevant to the state of overthinking. To truly grasp it, it helps to see dukkha in its three distinct forms. The first is the most obvious, the suffering of pain, or dukkha. This is the pain of a migraine, the sting of a harsh criticism, the grief of losing a loved one. It is the overt, undeniable pain that life inevitably presents. The second form is the suffering of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is a more subtle form of anxiety. It is the stress that comes from knowing that all pleasant things must end. You are having a perfect day, a beautiful vacation, but a small voice in the back of your mind, the voice of the monkey, whispers, "This won't last. Soon it will be over." This is the suffering inherent in clinging to things that are, by their very nature, impermanent. It is the anxiety of trying to build a solid house on shifting sands. But it is the third form of dukkha that speaks most directly to the overthinking mind. This is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the most profound and pervasive form. It is the background noise of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our being as long as we are identified with the monkey mind. It is the baseline hum of restlessness, the feeling that something is not quite right, the itch you can never scratch. It is the tension of constant becoming, of never simply being. This is the state of overthinking. It is the friction of the mind constantly striving, grasping, resisting, and analyzing. It is the exhaustion of being a separate self, fighting a lonely battle against the universe. Sankhara dukkha is the deep recognition that as long as the untamed monkey is in charge, there can be no lasting, unconditional peace. To hear this, to be told that a baseline level of unsatisfactoriness is a fundamental part of existence, can sound deeply pessimistic. It seems to go against everything our modern culture tells us. A culture that insists we can and should be happy all the time. We are bombarded with images of perpetual bliss, and we are sold 1,000 products and ideologies that promise to eliminate all discomfort. This culture of toxic positivity teaches us that if we feel anxious or dissatisfied, it must be a sign that we are doing something wrong. We are encouraged to suppress these feelings, to ignore them, to put on a happy face. But the Buddha, in his role as the great physician of the mind, knew that a diagnosis must come before a cure. To declare the first noble truth is not an act of pessimism, it is an act of radical realism. Imagine going to a doctor with a serious illness. A pessimistic doctor might say, "You are sick and there is no hope." A foolishly optimistic doctor might say, "You're fine, just think positive thoughts." But a wise and compassionate doctor would say, "Here is the nature of your illness. It has these characteristics and these symptoms. Let us look at it clearly, without fear, because only by understanding it completely can we find the path to healing." The Buddha's first truth is this clear, compassionate diagnosis. It is an invitation to stop pretending, to take off the mask of "I'm fine," and to have the immense courage to gently, honestly, acknowledge the reality of our own mental and emotional discomfort. This courageous act of acknowledgement carries within it a profound gift, the release from self-blame. As long as we believe we are supposed to be happy and peaceful all the time, then every moment of overthinking, every pang of anxiety, feels like a personal failure. We add a second layer of suffering on top of the first. First, there is the anxiety itself. And second, there is the anxious thought, "Why am I like this? What is wrong with me?" This second layer, this suffering about our suffering, is often more painful than the original condition. The first noble truth surgically removes this second layer. It universalizes the condition. The Buddha is saying, this feeling of dukkha, this restless monkey mind, is not your personal, private shame. It is not your fault. It is a fundamental part of the unawakened human experience. It is what it feels like to have a human mind. In this moment of understanding, the burden of personal failure lifts. The clenched fist of self-judgment begins to unclench. We can finally look at our own overthinking, not with criticism, but with a kind of scientific curiosity and even compassion. The question changes from, "What's wrong with me?" to, this is that dukkha feeling. This is the human condition in motion. This shift is the beginning of true self-compassion. This acceptance, however, must be clearly distinguished from resignation. Resignation is passive, hopeless, and defeated. It says, This is just how things are, so there's nothing I can do. I give up. Acceptance, in the Buddhist sense, is the opposite. It is active, empowered, and the necessary first step for any meaningful change. It says, okay, this is the reality of the situation. This is the diagnosis. Now that I am no longer wasting energy denying it or fighting it, I can use all of that energy to find the cure. The story of Kisa Gautami illustrates this journey from denial to acceptance perfectly. Kisa Gautami was a young mother in the time of the Buddha, whose only child had died. Mad with grief, she refused to accept his death, and she carried his small body from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some pitied her, some mocked her, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man told her to go to the Buddha. The Buddha listened to her with great compassion and told her he could help. But first, she must bring him a single mustard seed from a house where no one or no child, no parent, no spouse, no servant had ever died. Hope surged in her heart. This seemed like a simple task. She began her journey, going from house to house. At the first house, the family was happy to give her a mustard seed, but when she asked if anyone in their family had ever died, they looked at her with sadness. "Ah," they said, "the living are few, but the dead are many." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. Everywhere, the story was the same. Every family, rich or poor, had been touched by death. Slowly, as the sun began to set, the frantic hope in her heart was replaced by a deep, quiet understanding. Her personal, unbearable grief was transformed into a profound insight into the universal nature of loss. She realized that death was not a unique tragedy that had struck only her. It was a shared, inescapable part of life. Her acceptance was not resignation. It was a deep, calming awakening. She returned to the Buddha, no longer seeking a magic cure, but with a mind prepared to understand the truth. By courageously and completely accepting the first noble truth in her own life, she was now ready to hear the second. Having looked squarely at the illness, she was now ready to understand its cause. Having had the courage to look directly at the condition of our own unease, to name it dukkha, we have completed the first and most crucial step of the physician's visit. We have received the diagnosis. A profound sense of relief can accompany this clarity, but it is immediately followed by a vital, logical question. What causes this condition? If the overthinking mind, the restless monkey, the baseline hum of dissatisfaction is the symptom, what is the underlying disease? The Buddha, in his infinite wisdom as the great physician, answers this in his second noble truth, known as samudaya, which translates as the origin or the cause of suffering. The cause, he states with revolutionary simplicity, is thirst, craving, and clinging. The Pali word is tanha. It is this deep, instinctual thirst that fuels the frantic energy of the monkey mind and keeps the wheel of overthinking in perpetual motion. This is not a simple, single thirst, but a complex, three-pronged drive that pulls and pushes our consciousness in every moment. The first form of this thirst is the most obvious, the craving for sense pleasures, kama, tanha. This is the thirst for anything that gratifies our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for a delicious meal, for beautiful music, for a luxurious fabric against the skin. In our modern world, it is the thirst for a new car, a larger house, the latest smartphone. It is also the thirst for praise, for validation, for the pleasant feeling of being liked and admired. The overthinking mind spends countless hours in service to this thirst, plotting how to acquire these pleasures, replaying past pleasures, and anxiously fearing their loss. It is the mental engine of consumerism, constantly generating a sense of lack, a belief that our happiness is located in the next acquisition, the next experience, the next hit of sensory delight. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the craving to become, the thirst for existence, known as bhavatanha. This is not just a craving for things, but a craving for an identity. It is the deep desire to be a certain kind of person, to be successful, to be seen as intelligent, to be a good partner, to be spiritually advanced, to be the one who has it all together. This thirst fuels our ambition and also our deepest insecurities. The overthinking mind becomes a frantic scriptwriter, endlessly rehearsing the lines and actions of this idealized self. Before a job interview, it is bhavatanha that drives the obsessive worry, not just about getting the job, but about being seen as the perfect candidate. On social media, it is bhavatanha that compels us to curate a flawless digital identity, a highlight reel of our lives, and then suffer the anxiety that our real, messy life doesn't measure up. We are addicted to the idea of a solid, permanent, and impressive self, and we cling to this idea with white-knuckled desperation. The third form of thirst is the mirror image of the first two. It is the craving to not experience, the thirst for non-existence, known as vibhava-tanha. This is the energy of aversion, of pushing away. If craving is the pull, aversion is the push. It is the desperate desire to avoid unpleasant feelings, uncomfortable situations, and painful truths. It is the aversion to criticism, to failure, to sickness, to old age, to death. It is the voice that says, "I can't handle this, get this away from me." Overthinking is, in large part, a frantic strategy session driven by aversion. We lie awake at night, not just dreaming of success, bhavatanha, but also mapping out every possible way to avoid failure, vibhavatanha. We ruminate on a past mistake because we are so averse to the feeling of shame that we try to mentally undo it, to somehow litigate it in the court of our mind until the verdict is overturned. The overthinking mind is therefore trapped in a violent tug-of-war. It is constantly being pulled toward what it desires and simultaneously pushing away what it fears. This internal conflict, this immense and constant energetic effort of pulling and pushing, is the very engine of dukkha. It is the source of our profound exhaustion. Our modern world has become a grand cathedral built in worship of tanha. The entire industry of advertising is nothing more than the sophisticated science of creating and nurturing craving. It is designed to make you feel incomplete, to generate a sense of lack, and then to offer a product as the temporary cure for that manufactured disease. Social media platforms are exquisitely designed engines for bhavatanha, the craving to become. They provide a stage upon which we can perform our idealized identity and a system of intermittent rewards in the form of likes and comments that keeps our craving for validation perpetually stimulated. We scroll through the curated lives of others, and this fuels our vibhava tanha, our aversion to our own unedited, imperfect reality. We are swimming in an ocean of manufactured desire, constantly being told that our peace and happiness are just one purchase, one promotion, one more like away. This environment creates a perfect storm, a greenhouse in which the seeds of overthinking can grow into thick, suffocating jungles. This clinging, this tanha, does not stop at material things or idealized identities. Perhaps its most tenacious form is our clinging to views, opinions, and beliefs. We cling to our political ideologies, our religious beliefs, our scientific opinions, and even our own self-concept, as if they were life rafts in a stormy sea. How many hours are lost to overthinking in the form of mental arguments with people we disagree with? We replay conversations, thinking of the perfect comeback. We consume media that confirms our existing biases, reinforcing our sense of being right and the other side being wrong. We even cling to negative self-concepts, such as I am an anxious person or I am not good enough. We might not like these identities, but they are familiar, and so we cling to them, endlessly gathering mental evidence to support them. This clinging to views is a major source of the world's conflict. and our own inner turmoil. It creates a rigid mind, unable to adapt, unable to listen, and unable to find peace. The tragedy of this clinging is captured perfectly in a classic Zen story. Two monks, one older and one younger, were on a long journey. They came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman stood there, hesitant, unable to cross. Without a word, the older monk hoisted her onto his back, carried her across the churning water, and set her down on the other side. She thanked him, and the monks continued their journey. For the next several hours, the younger monk was sullen and silent, his mind a tempest. He grew more and more agitated. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Brother, we are monks. We have taken vows not to touch a woman. How could you do such a thing? How could you break your vows by carrying that woman across the river?" The older monk looked at him with a gentle, placid expression. "Brother," he said calmly, "I put that woman down on the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a perfect map of the overthinking mind. The event itself, crossing the river, was neutral. It was a simple act of compassion, but the younger monk, through his clinging to the rules, to his idea of what a monk should be, held on to the event. He carried the woman in his mind, long after the older monk had put her down. He generated hours of his own dukkha, not from the event itself, but from his mental attachment to it. He was caught in the web of tanha. This is our condition. We are all the younger monk, carrying the burdens of yesterday, the insults, the mistakes, the regrets long after they have passed. We carry the imagined burdens of tomorrow, rehearsing our fears and anxieties. The cause of our suffering is not the river of life itself, but our desperate, exhausting refusal to put things down. If this is the cause, if the disease is clinging, then the cure must lie in the art of letting go. But how? How do we put down the things we are carrying so tightly? To let go of something, we must first see it clearly. We must understand the nature of the thing we are clinging to. This is where the Buddha's wisdom guides us next, toward a profound insight into the very nature of reality, a teaching that, once understood, makes clinging seem like the most illogical act in the universe. This is the wisdom of impermanence. We have identified the disease that underlies our overthinking, the deep and persistent thirst we call tanha, the clinging to what we desire and the pushing away of what we fear. We have seen how we are like the young monk, carrying our burdens in our minds long after they have passed. This leaves us with the most practical of questions. How do we put them down? How do we loosen the white-knuckled grip of our own mind? The answer lies not in a new technique or a secret trick, but in a profound shift of perception. It requires us to see the true nature of the things we are clinging to. The Buddha's teaching on this is one of the pillars of his wisdom, a key that unlocks the cage of overthinking. It is the teaching of anicca, or impermanence. Anicca is the universal law that states that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static, nothing is permanent, nothing is fixed. Everything that comes into being will, inevitably, pass away. This is not a dark or depressing philosophy. It is a simple, observable fact. Think of a mighty river. You cannot step into the same river twice, for the water is always flowing, always changing. The river you step into now is different from the one you stepped into a moment ago. Our own bodies are a perfect example of anicca. Scientists tell us that nearly all the cells in our body are replaced every 7 to 10 years. The physical person you are today is not the same physical person you were a decade ago. You are a process, not a static entity. Look at the world around you. Great mountains are slowly worn down by wind and rain. Empires rise, flourish, and crumble into dust. Seasons turn, day gives way to night, and night gives way to day. The universe itself is a dance of anicca, of stars being born from nebulae and dying in supernova explosions. This law is absolute, operating on every level of existence, from the cosmic to the microscopic. And most importantly for our purposes, it operates on the level of our own mind. Every thought, every emotion, every mood, every sensation that arises within us is, by its very nature, impermanent. Now, hold this profound truth of anicca in one hand, and in the other, hold the habit of overthinking. You will see that they are in perfect opposition. Overthinking is a declaration of war against impermanence. When we ruminate on the past, what are we doing? We are taking a fleeting, transient mistake, a regret, a lost love, and we are trying to make it permanent by replaying it endlessly. We are attempting to freeze frame the river, to hold on to a single drop of water. When we worry about the future, what are we doing? We are trying to control a vast, unknowable, and impermanent cascade of events. We create a fixed, solid image of a disaster we want to avoid, or a success we want to guarantee, and we cling to this mental image as if it were real. We are trying to build a dam to stop the flow of the river. This is why overthinking is so utterly exhausting. We are not just fighting our own thoughts, we are fighting the fundamental nature of reality itself. It is a battle we can never, ever win. All we can do is wear ourselves out in the struggle. The energy we expend in trying to hold on, in resisting the natural flow of life, is the very energy that drains our peace and creates our suffering. To understand this is to find the antidote. The contemplation of impermanence is the medicine that dissolves the grip of clinging. It is a practice, a way of applying this wisdom in the midst of our daily lives. When a powerful, painful emotion arises, a wave of anxiety, a surge of anger, a pang of deep sadness, or habitual reaction is to tense up, to resist it. We treat the feeling like a solid, permanent enemy that has invaded our being. But what if, instead, we could meet it with the wisdom of anicca? What if we could gently say to ourselves, this feeling is here now. It is strong, but it is impermanent. It is a cloud passing through the sky of my awareness. It arose from conditions, and when the conditions change, it will pass away. This does not mean the feeling will instantly vanish, but it fundamentally changes our relationship to it. We stop struggling. We stop pouring fuel on the fire with our resistance. We create a space of gentle, knowing allowance. We can observe the feeling with curiosity instead of fear, knowing that we are the sky, not the storm. The same applies to pleasant experiences. When we feel a moment of pure joy or deep peace, the clinging mind immediately wants to grasp it, to hold on to it forever. This grasping itself introduces a subtle anxiety, the fear of the moment ending. But if we meet the joy with the wisdom of anicca, we can appreciate it even more fully. We know it is a precious, fleeting gift. We can savor it completely, without the tension of trying to make it last. We can let it go gracefully when its time is over, filled with gratitude rather than disappointment. The practice, then, is to become an observer of this endless flow. It is to sit on the bank of the river of your mind and simply watch what floats by. A thought of work appears anicca. A feeling of boredom arises anicca. A happy memory surfaces anicca. We treat them all as clouds passing in the vast open sky of our awareness. We do not try to chase the fluffy white clouds or shoot down the dark, stormy ones. We simply notice their coming and their going. This practice cultivates a deep sense of equanimity, a balanced and spacious state of mind that is not easily disturbed by the changing weather of our inner world. There is a beautiful story that captures this wisdom perfectly. A mighty king, who had known both immense triumph and devastating defeat, summoned his wisest advisors. "I want you to create a ring for me," he commanded. "Engrave upon it a message that can make me happy when I am in despair, and that can bring me back to earth when I am lost in triumph." The advisors deliberated for weeks, and finally returned with a simple gold ring. The king looked at the inscription, and his eyes filled with understanding. The message read, this too shall pass. This simple phrase is the essence of anicca. In times of deep suffering, it is a comforting reminder that our pain is not permanent. The storm will pass. The sun will rise again. In times of great success and elation, it is a humbling reminder of the dangers of pride and attachment. This too, this moment of glory, is fleeting. It is a call to humility and appreciation, not to arrogant grasping. The wisdom of this too shall pass is a master key that can be used in any situation to unlock the chains of overthinking. We have now seen that the objects of our clinging are thoughts, our emotions, our very life situations are as transient as clouds in the wind or writing on water. To cling to them is futile. But this leads to an even deeper, more unsettling question. We have examined the clouds, but what about the sky? We have looked at the ever-changing contents of our mind, but what about the container? What about the I who is doing all this thinking, feeling, and clinging? Is this I a solid, permanent thing, or is it too subject to the universal law of anicca? To explore this question is to venture into the deepest waters of Buddhist thought, to confront a teaching that is both challenging and profoundly liberating. It is the wisdom that cuts the root of suffering once and for all. It is the wisdom of no self. We have journeyed to the edge of a profound realization, seeing with clarity the universal law of anicca, or impermanence. We have watched as our thoughts, emotions, and life circumstances reveal themselves to be no more solid than clouds drifting in the sky. To cling to them is to grasp at the wind. This understanding alone can bring a great deal of peace, loosening the tight grip of overthinking. But now, we must ask the final, most penetrating question. If the thoughts are clouds and the feelings are the passing weather, then what is the sky? What is this I that seems to be at the center of it all? The one who is thinking, feeling, and suffering. We instinctively feel like a solid, continuous self, a pilot in the cockpit of the body and mind. But the Buddha asks us to investigate this feeling, to look for this pilot. And when we look with unflinching honesty, we encounter his most radical, challenging, and ultimately liberating teaching, the wisdom of anatta, or no self. Anatta teaches that upon close examination, we can find no evidence of a permanent, independent, separate self or soul. The I that we feel so strongly, the protagonist of our life story, is not a solid entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. It is a temporary bundling together of different components, much like a car is a bundling together of an engine, wheels, and a chassis. We use the label car for convenience, but there is no essential carness that exists apart from its components. The Buddha analyzed this process we call a self into 5 distinct components, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. The first is form, our physical body, with all its sensation. The second is feeling, the raw experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral tones that arise from contact with the world. The third is perception, the mental function that recognizes, labels, and categorizes our experience. That is a tree, this is a pleasant sound, that was an insult. The fourth, and a key component for overthinking, is mental formations. This includes all our habits, biases, opinions, intentions, and most importantly, our thoughts. This is the engine of the monkey mind. The fifth is consciousness, the raw, basic awareness that allows the other 4 components to be known. What we call me or I is simply the constant, flickering interplay of these 5 processes. There is a body, there is feeling, there is perceiving, there is thinking, and there is consciousness of it all. But there is no separate CEO behind the desk, no ghost in the machine who is owning and directing the entire operation. The feeling of being a continuous self is an illusion, a trick of the mind, created by the rapid succession of these processes, much like the rapid succession of still frames in a film, creates the illusion of a continuous moving picture. This is not to say that you do not exist. It is to say that you do not exist in the way you think you do. You are not a noun, you are a verb. You are not a static thing, you are a dynamic happening. Now, let us connect this profound philosophy directly to the suffering of overthinking. What is every single drama of overthinking about? It is about me. We ruminate on a past mistake because I messed up, and the integrity of this me feels damaged. We worry about a future presentation because I might fail, and the reputation of this me is on the line. We feel anxious about a social gathering because I might say the wrong thing and I will be judged. The self is the central character, the hero or the victim, in every story the overthinking mind tells. It is a project of constant self-maintenance, self-defense, and self-improvement. We spend our lives polishing, protecting, and promoting this imaginary CEO. This project is the very definition of exhausting because we are trying to protect something that isn't even there in the first place. The wisdom of anatta pulls the rug out from under this entire project. If there is no fixed, solid self to defend, who is it that is being threatened? If there is no permanent self to perfect, who is it that is failing? When you question the existence of the main character, the entire melodrama of overthinking begins to lose its power. It is like discovering the monster in the scary movie is just a man in a rubber suit. You can no longer take it so seriously. This realization brings about a profound psychological shift, the depersonalization of our own thoughts. We suffer so intensely from our thoughts because we believe they are our thoughts. We believe they emanate from a central me, and therefore they must say something deeply true and personal about who we are. An anxious thought means I am an anxious person. A cruel thought means I am a bad person. We take ownership of every piece of mental flotsam that drifts through our awareness. The wisdom of anatta allows us to let go of this crushing burden of ownership. It allows us to see our thoughts for what they are, not personal proclamations, but impersonal mental events. They are like the weather. A dark, stormy thought is not my darkness. It is simply a storm front moving through the climate of the mind, caused by a confluence of conditions. When we see this, we can stop identifying with the weather. We do not have to become the storm. We can remain as the spacious sky, allowing the storm to pass through without resistance. This creates an incredible sense of freedom. The thoughts may still come, but they are no longer aimed at us. They have no one to stick to. This leads to a simple yet radical practice. It is a shift in the very language of the mind. Instead of thinking, I am angry, you can practice observing, there is a feeling of anger arising. Instead of, I am thinking about my problems, you can note, thinking is happening. This is not just a semantic game. This subtle shift in language reinforces a profound shift in perspective. It moves you from being the protagonist trapped in the drama to being the audience, watching the play unfold. You are no longer the thought. You are the one who notices the thought. It creates space, and in that space, peace can be found. The perfect story to illustrate this is a famous Zen parable. A man is enjoying a quiet moment, rowing his boat in the middle of a misty lake. Suddenly, another boat comes out of the fog and rams into his with a loud thud. The man is filled with rage. He stands up and begins to scream curses at the person in the other boat, furious at their carelessness and stupidity for ruining his peaceful morning. But as he gets closer, he sees that the other boat is completely empty. It had simply come untied and was drifting with the current. In that instant, his anger vanishes. There is no one to be angry at. It was an impersonal event. The source of his rage was not the collision, but his assumption that there was an intentional, blameworthy someone steering the other boat. Our overthinking mind is like this angry man. Every stressful, anxious, or self-critical thought that drifts into our awareness is like that empty boat. We suffer because we assume there is a someone steering it that it's me thinking these thoughts, or that they are a personal attack. The wisdom of anatta is the moment of seeing clearly that the boat is empty. The thoughts are ownerless. They are simply drifting on the currents of cause and effect. And when you truly see that, your anger, your anxiety, your fear has nowhere to land. We have now journeyed through the foundational views of Buddhist wisdom. We have seen the reality of dukkha, the cause of it in our clinging, and the profound antidotes of impermanence, anicca, and no-self, anatta. We have been given a new and revolutionary map of our own minds and of reality itself. But a map, no matter how accurate, is of little use if you do not know how to walk the path it describes. Seeing things differently is the beginning, but we must also learn to act and live differently. How do we integrate this liberating view into the fabric of our daily lives? The Buddha, as the ultimate practical guide, laid out a clear, step-by-step framework for this journey. It is a path of practice, a way of transforming every aspect of our lives into a vehicle for awakening. This is the Noble Eightfold Path, and it begins with the very first step of ensuring that our new map is always in hand. It begins with right view. We stand now at a significant turning point in our journey. We have traveled through the deep and sometimes challenging terrain of Buddhist philosophy. We have diagnosed the condition of our unease as dukkha, identified its cause in the clinging of tanha, and discovered the profound, liberating truths of impermanence, anicca, and no-self, anatta. We now hold in our hands a new map of reality, one that is radically different from the one we have been using. But a map is only a piece of paper until it guides our first step. The question now becomes a practical one. How do we use this map to navigate the difficult territory of our daily lives? The Buddha's answer is a comprehensive guide for living, a set of 8 practical disciplines known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This is not a set of commandments to be blindly followed, but a holistic program for training the mind, heart, and body to walk the path to peace. And it begins, fittingly, with the map itself. The very first step on the path is samadhituddhi, or right view. Right view is, quite simply, the commitment to seeing things as they truly are. It means holding this new map in our minds, using the wisdom we have cultivated as the primary lens through which we interpret our experience. It is the intellectual and intuitive grasp of the Four Noble Truths. It is the clear seeing of impermanence in every aspect of our lives. It is the radical understanding of no self at the core of our being. Right view is the compass of our journey. Without it, any effort we make is likely to lead us in the wrong direction. If your goal is to travel north, but your compass is broken and tells you that north is south, you can walk with great energy and discipline, but you will only get more and more lost. Right view ensures our efforts are aligned with reality, not with our fears and fantasies. It is the cognitive framework that supports the entire path of transformation. To understand right view, it is essential to understand its opposite, which is the default operating system of the overthinking mind, wrong view or miccha ditthhi. Wrong view is the distorted lens through which the monkey mind perceives the world. It is a set of fundamental misperceptions that actively generate suffering. Wrong view looks at a fleeting, impermanent emotion like anxiety and sees it as a solid, permanent threat, whispering, "This feeling will last forever. This is who you are." Wrong view looks at the tantalizing objects of craving a promotion, a relationship, a material possession, and sees in them the promise of lasting happiness, whispering, "If only you get this, you will finally be complete." And most tragically, wrong view looks at the ever-changing, impersonal flow of thoughts and feelings and perceives a solid, vulnerable self at the center of it all, whispering, "This is happening to me. This is a reflection of my worth." Every single loop of overthinking is an expression of wrong view in action. Rumination is the mind clinging to a past event, refusing to accept its impermanence. Worry is the mind trying to impose permanence on an uncertain future. Self-criticism is the mind attacking a fictional, solid self for not living up to an impossible standard. Overthinking, at its very core, is the mind's exhausting, futile attempt to make reality conform to its own mistaken map. It is a war fought against the truth, and right view is the declaration of peace. How then do we practice right view in the heat of the moment? How do we use it when we are caught in the grip of an anxious thought loop at 3 a.m? It becomes a practice of mindful reframing. Let us take a common and painful thought: I am not good enough. Under the influence of wrong view, this thought feels solid, true, and deeply personal. It triggers a cascade of shame, fear, and further self-judgment. We either fight the thought, which gives it more energy, or we collapse under its weight. Right view offers a third option. The first step is to simply acknowledge the thought without judgment. The thought, I am not good enough, has arisen. The next step is to consciously apply the lens of right view, to investigate it with our new map. We can ask ourselves, is this thought permanent? Will I be thinking this exact thought an hour from now, a day from now? The answer, clearly, is no. We are seeing its anicca. Then we can ask, who is this I that is not good enough? Can I find a solid, unchanging me inside my body or mind? Or is this I just a collection of ever-changing thoughts, feelings, and sensations? In this question, we are applying the wisdom of anatta. Finally, we can ask, what happens when I cling to this thought, when I believe it is true? Does it lead to peace or to suffering? We see clearly that believing this thought is the direct cause of our dukkha. Through this brief investigation, the thought I am not good enough is transformed. It has not been suppressed or denied. It has been seen for what it is, an impermanent, impersonal, and suffering-inducing mental event. Its power over us is dramatically reduced. It changes from a venomous snake into a harmless piece of rope. This brings us to a crucial clarification. Right view is not the same as so-called positive thinking. Positive thinking often involves denying or papering over reality. It is the attempt to force a good thought on top of a bad one. Right view is far more radical and effective. It is not about thinking positive thoughts, but about seeing all thoughts, positive and negative, for what they truly are. It is about radical realism. It is the courage to see life's difficulties, our own shortcomings, and the world's pain without flinching, but also without the distortions of wrong view that add layers of unnecessary, self-generated suffering. The classic parable for this is that of a man walking home at dusk. In the dim light, he sees something coiled on the path ahead, and his heart leaps into his throat. A snake. Adrenaline floods his system. His mind races with fear. Every fiber of his being is consumed by this terrifying reality. He is frozen, trapped by the snake. His suffering is 100% real. Then, a friend comes along with a lantern. The friend shines the light on the path, and in the bright, clear glow, the man sees that it was not a snake at all. It was merely a coiled piece of rope. In that instant, without any effort, without any need to fight the snake, his fear completely vanishes. The darkness was wrong view, which projected a terrifying story onto a neutral object. The lantern is right view. It does not change the object, it simply illuminates it for what it truly is. And in that illumination, the suffering dissolves on its own. Our work on this path is not to become snake fighters, constantly battling our negative thoughts. Our work is simply to learn how to turn on the light. By establishing right view, we have set our compass. We have a reliable guide that can keep us oriented toward peace and away from suffering. We now know the difference between the rope and the snake. When we hold this correct map of reality, it naturally begins to influence not just how we see things, but what we choose to do and where we choose to go. A clear view of the landscape informs our decisions about which direction to travel. It shapes our deepest motivations and aspirations. Holding the understanding that clinging to thoughts causes suffering, we are naturally moved to cultivate a different kind of intention in our minds. This leads us directly to the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the vital next step that flows directly from a clear perspective: right intention. With our compass of right view now in hand, we have a clear and reliable understanding of the landscape of our mind. We can distinguish the harmless rope from the imaginary snake. For the first time, we are oriented. The path ahead, while perhaps long, is no longer shrouded in fog. Knowing where we are and seeing the terrain for what it is naturally gives rise to the next question: in which direction should we walk? A view, no matter how clear, is static. To move, we need a motor, a driving force. This motive force on the Noble Eightfold Path is the second factor, Samma Sankappa, or right intention. It is the heart's response to the mind's clarity. If right view is the seeing, right intention is the leaning, the conscious and deliberate tilting of the mind and heart toward that which is wholesome and liberating. Right intention is not a vague wish for things to be better. It is a specific and threefold commitment, a conscious cultivation of certain qualities of heart that stand in direct opposition to the toxic fuel of overthinking. The first of these is the intention of renunciation. The word renunciation can sound severe, conjuring images of abandoning the world. But in this context, it means something far more intimate and practical. It is the intention to renounce our addiction to clinging. It is the willingness to let go of the patterns of craving and aversion that we have seen are the root cause of our suffering. It is the intention to renounce the exhausting project of defending a fictional self. When you feel the familiar hook of an obsessive thought, the intention of renunciation is the gentle inner whisper that says, "I can let this go. I don't have to follow this down the rabbit hole. I choose freedom over this struggle." It is a leaning away from entanglement and toward release. The second facet of right intention is the intention of goodwill, or loving kindness. This is the deliberate choice to replace the energies of anger, resentment, and ill will with warmth, friendliness, and benevolence. It is a conscious commitment to meet all beings, including ourselves, with a heart of kindness. So much of our overthinking is a toxic stew of ill will. We ruminate on past hurts, replaying conversations with the intention of silently punishing the other person. We direct streams of anger at politicians, at other drivers in traffic, at family members. Most painfully, we direct a constant flow of ill will toward ourselves in the form of the inner critic, that merciless voice that judges our every move. The intention of goodwill is the antidote. It is the conscious choice to soften, to forgive, to replace the harsh voice of the inner critic with the gentle voice of an inner friend. It is the simple, powerful intention, "May I be kind to myself. May others be happy." The third facet is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the intention to abstain from causing harm to any living being, in thought, word, or deed. It is the active desire to see suffering in ourselves and in others, and to wish for it to be relieved. Overthinking is often a deeply violent activity. When we are caught in a spiral of anxious worry, we are doing violence to our own nervous system, flooding it with stress hormones for no reason. When we indulge in vicious self-criticism, we are engaging in an act of profound psychological self-harm. The intention of harmlessness is the vow to stop this inner violence. It is the commitment to treat ourselves as we would a dear friend who is suffering. It is the recognition that our anxious thoughts are already painful enough, and that adding a layer of self-judgment on top is a needless act of cruelty. This intention of compassion is the gentle hand that soothes the frantic monkey mind, rather than the stick that tries to beat it into submission. Now, let us place these right intentions alongside the mental habits of overthinking. We will see that overthinking is almost always powered by a set of corresponding wrong intentions. When we lie awake worrying about the future, what is our underlying intention? It is the intention to control the uncontrollable. It is the arrogant belief that if we just think hard enough, we can force reality to bend to our will. This intention is in direct opposition to renunciation. When we stew in resentment over something someone said to us, what is the intention? It is the intention to retaliate, to seek a futile revenge in the theater of our mind. This is the opposite of goodwill. When we are paralyzed by anxious perfectionism before a task, what is the intention? It is often a violent intention, to whip ourselves into performing perfectly out of a deep-seated fear of failure, an utter lack of harmlessness. By recognizing the unwholesome intention that fuels a particular thought loop, we expose its hidden engine. We see that the process is not random noise, it is purposeful, but its purpose is misguided and leads only to exhaustion. The practice, then, becomes a moment-to-moment inquiry. It is the cultivation of a simple, powerful question that we can introduce at any time. What is the intention here? When you notice your mind beginning to spin, you can gently pause and ask, what is the flavor of my mind right now? Is it the flavor of control or of letting go? Is it the flavor of resentment or of kindness? Is it the flavor of harshness or of compassion? This simple question is a powerful pattern interrupt. It breaks the hypnotic trance of obsessive thinking and introduces a moment of mindful choice. You don't have to have the right answer immediately. The power is in the asking. The act of asking itself shifts you from being a prisoner of the thought to being the curious observer of it. It brings the light of awareness to the hidden motivations that are running the show. And in that light, you create the possibility of choosing a different path, of consciously aligning your intention with peace rather than with struggle. This practice is not only about catching wrong intentions after they have arisen, it is also about being proactive, about consciously planting the seeds of wholesome intentions in the mind before the weeds have a chance to grow. This brings us to a beautiful and useful parable, the story of the garden. Your mind is like a plot of fertile land. If you do nothing with it, if you simply leave it untended, something will inevitably grow. But what grows on its own are the weeds. The weeds of fear, of greed, of anger, of jealousy. These are the default vegetation of the untended mind. They require no effort to sprout. Before long, the garden will be a wild, choked, and tangled mess. To have a beautiful garden, a place of peace and nourishment, you cannot be passive. You must be a conscious gardener. You must diligently pull the weeds of unwholesome thoughts as they arise. But more importantly, you must actively plant the flowers and vegetables you wish to see. You must plant the seeds of loving kindness, the bulbs of compassion, and the saplings of renunciation. This requires daily, patient effort. It means starting the day by setting a clear intention. Today, my intention is to be gentle with myself. Today, I will look for the good in others. Today, I will practice letting go of small frustrations. A mind filled with these intentionally planted flowers has little room for the weeds to take root. A peaceful mind is not a gift, it is a cultivated garden. These intentions, these seeds that we plant in the soil of our minds, do not remain hidden. They inevitably sprout and manifest in the world. The quality of our inner world determines the quality of our outer actions. And one of the very first places that our intentions bear fruit, one of the most immediate expressions of our inner state, is in the words we use. The thoughts and intentions we cultivate in the silence of our mind find their voice in what comes out of our mouths. Therefore, to continue on this path of transforming our inner world, we must become mindful of how we express it outwardly. This leads us directly to the next crucial step in our practice, the third factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech. The seeds of our intention, whether wholesome or unwholesome, do not lie dormant in the soil of the mind for long. They sprout, and their first, most immediate expression is through our speech. The words we choose to speak are our intentions made audible, a direct broadcast of our inner state. What we say and how we say it is not a superficial act. It is a powerful force that shapes our reality, both externally and internally. It creates ripples in the world and, crucially, it grooves deep channels in our own consciousness. Recognizing this profound connection, the Buddha designated the third step on the path as samavacha, or right speech. This is the practice of using our words with the same mindfulness and compassion that we are striving to cultivate in our hearts, understanding that our speech can either be a source of great suffering or a powerful tool for healing and peace. Right speech is traditionally defined by what it avoids. It is a practice of abstaining from 4 specific types of harmful language. The first is lying. This is more than just avoiding blatant falsehoods. It is a deep commitment to speaking what is true and useful. When we lie, we create a second, false reality that we must then expend enormous mental energy to maintain. The mind becomes cluttered with the need to remember which story was told to whom, generating a constant, low-grade stress. A commitment to truthfulness simplifies our lives immeasurably. It fosters a mind that is clear, uncluttered, and free from the anxiety of being discovered. The second type of harmful language is divisive speech. This is speech that sets one person against another. It is the act of carrying tales, of speaking ill of someone behind their back, of using words to create suspicion and discord. At its heart, gossip is a form of divisive speech. When we engage in gossip, we may feel a momentary sense of inclusion or superiority, but we are actively poisoning the well of human trust. We are creating an atmosphere of judgment and suspicion, both in our community and, as we will see, in our own mind. Right speech, in contrast, is speech that unites. It encourages harmony, seeks to understand rather than to judge, and fosters trust. The third form is harsh speech. These are words spoken in anger, meant to wound. It is the language of insults, of abuse, of cruel sarcasm, of shouting and berating. Harsh speech is a form of violence. It may not leave a physical scar, but it can create deep emotional wounds in others. When we use harsh speech, we are momentarily discharging our own pain by inflicting it on someone else. But this release is illusory. The anger and aggression that fuel the harsh words linger in our own system long after they are spoken, agitating the mind and creating feelings of guilt and regret. Right speech is gentle speech. It is speech that is kind, considerate, and motivated by a desire to help, not to harm. The fourth, and perhaps most pervasive form of wrong speech, is idle chatter. This is pointless, meaningless talk that serves no real purpose. It is the endless complaining about the weather, the traffic, or our health. It is the non-stop narration of our own opinions on subjects we know little about. It is the verbal filler we use to avoid the discomfort of silence. This constant stream of verbal noise is the external equivalent of the monkey mind's internal chatter. It agitates the mind, depletes our energy, and reinforces a habit of mental restlessness. Right speech, by contrast, is purposeful. It understands the value of silence. It means speaking only when we have something true, kind, and useful to say. Now, here is the crucial connection to our inner world, to the problem of overthinking. The way we speak is a form of practice. It is a rehearsal. Every time we choose to engage in one of these forms of wrong speech, we are strengthening that very same pattern within our own mind. When you engage in gossip, you are not just talking about another person, you are actively practicing the mental state of judgment. You are training your mind to look for flaws, to find fault, and to feel superior. Is it any wonder then that this same judgmental mind turns on itself, creating endless loops of self-criticism? When you engage in constant complaining, you are not just describing negative circumstances, you are practicing the mental state of dissatisfaction. You are training your mind to scan the world for what is wrong. This habit of mind doesn't magically switch off when you are alone. It continues to operate, finding things to be dissatisfied about in your own life, your own personality, your own past. The way we talk to others becomes the template for how our mind talks to itself. You cannot expect to cultivate a peaceful, quiet inner garden if you are constantly spewing verbal pollution into the world around you. The two are inseparable. One of the most powerful practices to understand this connection is the cultivation of noble silence. This does not mean becoming a mute or refusing to engage with others. It means consciously choosing periods of silence in order to observe the impulse to speak. When you are in a conversation and feel a powerful urge to interrupt, to offer an opinion, or to share a piece of gossip, you can choose to just watch that urge. What does it feel like in the body? What is the intention behind it? Is it a desire to be seen as smart? A need to fill the uncomfortable space? An impulse to complain? By observing this process without acting on it, you learn a tremendous amount about the workings of your own monkey mind. Furthermore, this practice has a deeply calming effect. By reducing the amount of external verbal noise you create, you naturally begin to lower the volume of the internal noise as well. You discover a peace in silence that the chattering mind can never know. Ultimately, the practice of right speech must be turned inward. We must apply the same compassionate standards to our own internal dialogue. For many of us, if we spoke to our friends the way we speak to ourselves, we would have no friends left. We are our own worst bullies, our own harshest critics. The voice of overthinking is the voice of wrong speech directed at the self. It lies to us, telling us we are worthless. It is divisive, separating us from our own innate goodness. It is harsh, calling us stupid or a failure. And it is the ultimate idle chatter, a pointless, repetitive loop that accomplishes nothing but our own suffering. The practice here is to become the gentle moderator of your own mind. It is to bring the same filters you would use in a kind conversation to your own self-talk. The Greek philosopher Socrates provided a wonderful framework for this. According to the legend, a man ran up to Socrates one day and said, "Socrates, I have to tell you something about one of your friends." "Hold on," Socrates replied. "Before you tell me, I'd like you to pass a little test. It is called the test of the 3 sieves. The first sieve," he said, "is truth. Are you absolutely sure that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Well, no, I just heard it from someone else." "All right," said Socrates. "So you don't really know if it's true. Now let's try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me about my friend something good?" "No, on the contrary," said the man. "So," Socrates continued, "you want to tell me something bad about him, even though you're not certain it's true?" The man shrugged, a little embarrassed. Socrates continued, "There is one sieve left, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you want to tell me going to be useful to me?" "No, not really," said the man. "Well," concluded Socrates, "if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me at all?" This is the test we must apply to the voice of overthinking. When that familiar, self-critical thought arises, we can pass it through the 3 sieves. Is this thought, "I am a complete failure," absolutely, 100% true? Or is it just a feeling, an exaggeration, a distortion? Is this thought good or kind? Is it the voice of a friend? Clearly not. And finally, is this thought useful? Is berating myself in this way actually helping me to solve the problem, or is it just paralyzing me and making me feel worse? By using this simple, wise filter, we can learn to dismiss the toxic chatter of the mind. We can choose not to listen. We can choose not to believe. Just as our most subtle intentions find their voice in our speech, they also find their form in our physical presence in the world. Our deeds, our physical behaviors, are the final and most concrete manifestation of our inner state. They create powerful karmic ripples that return to affect our peace of mind for days, weeks, and years to come. To build a life that supports a quiet mind, a mind free from the overthinking caused by guilt, regret, and inner conflict, we must ensure that our actions are in harmony with our deepest values. This brings us to the next steps on the path, which ground our spiritual practice in the solid reality of our ethical conduct, right action, and right livelihood. Our journey along the path has brought us from the mind to the heart, and from the heart to the voice. We have seen how our view of reality shapes our intentions, and how our intentions manifest in our speech. Now, we arrive at the most concrete and tangible expression of our inner world, our physical actions. The deeds we perform, the way we move through the world and interact with it, are the final and undeniable fruit of the seeds planted in our minds. These actions create the most powerful and lasting ripples, shaping not only the world around us but also the very landscape of our own consciousness. To cultivate a mind that is serene and free from the turbulence of overthinking, we must first create a life that is serene and free from the turbulence of unethical conduct. This brings us to the foundational pillars of ethical living on the Eightfold Path, the fourth factor, Samma Kamanta, or right action, and the fifth factor, Samma Ajiva, or right livelihood. Right action is the practice of aligning our physical behavior with our deepest intention of harmlessness. It is a training in blamelessness, a way of living that leaves behind no traces of regret, guilt, or fear, the very ghosts that haunt the overthinking mind. Traditionally, right action is defined by three fundamental abstentions. The first is to abstain from taking life. On its most basic level, this is a commitment not to kill, but its spirit extends to the cultivation of a profound reverence for all living things. It is the practice of gentleness, of protecting life rather than destroying it. A mind that intentionally harms other beings is a mind that will be agitated by violence and fear. A mind that cultivates gentleness and protection naturally becomes more peaceful and secure. The second abstention is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of radical honesty and integrity. While it certainly includes not stealing or robbing, its modern application runs much deeper. It means not cheating on our taxes, not padding an expense report, not taking credit for a colleague's work, not violating intellectual property. It is the commitment to be impeccably honest in all our dealings. Every act of dishonesty, no matter how small, plants a seed of anxiety in the mind. It creates a secret that must be guarded, a story that must be maintained. It builds a fragile facade that we live in constant fear of being shattered. A person whose actions are completely transparent and honest has nothing to hide. Their inner and outer worlds are aligned. This creates a mind that is simple, straightforward, and free from the complex calculations and fears that plague a dishonest one. The third abstention is to abstain from sexual misconduct. In our modern context, this is best understood as a commitment to conducting our intimate lives with wisdom and compassion. It means honoring consent and respecting the dignity of others. It means avoiding exploitation, deceit, or any action that causes emotional harm and chaos for ourselves or for others. So much of the most painful and obsessive overthinking is born from the turmoil of irresponsible relationships, the regret over past actions, the jealousy, the betrayal, the heartbreak. By committing to right action in this deeply personal realm, we vow to create conditions for trust, stability, and mutual respect, thereby protecting our minds from some of the most potent sources of suffering and rumination. These 3 precepts of right action are not arbitrary rules imposed by an external authority. They are a profoundly practical guide to psychological well-being. Think of unethical actions as hot coals. When you choose to lie or to cause harm, it is like picking up a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You may or may not hit your target, but one thing is certain: you are the one who gets burned first. The act itself scars your own mind with guilt, fear, and regret. A life lived in accordance with right action is a life of blamelessness. There are no hot coals in your hands. There are no ghosts from the past waiting to emerge from the shadows. This blamelessness is a prerequisite for deep peace. It is very difficult to find inner stillness when your mind is a courtroom, endlessly litigating your past actions. Flowing directly from the principles of right action is the 5th factor, right livelihood. For most of us, a huge portion of our waking life is dedicated to our work, the way we earn a living. If our work is in direct conflict with our deepest values, it creates a state of profound inner division, a cognitive dissonance that is a massive and chronic source of stress. Right livelihood is the practice of earning a living in a way that does not cause harm and, if possible, contributes to the well-being of the world. The traditional texts list specific trades to be avoided, such as dealing in weapons, in living beings for slaughter, in poisons, or in intoxicants. The underlying principle is clear: one should not profit from the suffering or exploitation of others. In our complex modern economy, this principle requires careful personal reflection. Are we working for a company whose practices we find unethical? Does our work require us to engage in deceit or to exploit the vulnerabilities of others? Does it contribute to the destruction of our planet? To live with this kind of inner conflict is to live with a constant, low-grade fever of the soul. The mind will try to cope by creating elaborate justifications, by numbing itself, or by spinning in endless loops of guilt and anxiety. It asks, am I a good person if I am contributing to this? This internal split is fertile ground for overthinking. To align our work with our values, to find a livelihood that feels honest and harmless, is one of the most powerful steps we can take to simplify our minds. It may sometimes require difficult choices, perhaps choosing a path with less financial reward, but greater inner integrity. But the peace that comes from a unified mind, from knowing that the way you spend your days is not at war with the person you want to be, is a form of wealth that cannot be measured. There is a powerful story that illustrates the peace born from a clear conscience. A certain king was a devout man, but he was plagued by insomnia and anxiety. His mind would race at night, worrying about the state of his kingdom, about potential enemies, about the morality of his decisions. He heard that in the same city there lived a butcher who was known to be a happy and peaceful man, and this perplexed the king. How can this be? He thought. This man's work is violent, yet he is peaceful, while I, who strive for virtue, am tormented. He summoned the butcher and asked him his secret. The butcher replied, "Your Majesty, I have no secret. I do my work with skill and care. I provide food for the people of this city. When I go home, I have enough to feed my family. I have wronged no one. My mind is simple. I have nothing to regret and nothing to fear, and so I sleep well." The king, on the other hand, for all his luxury and power, had a mind burdened by the immense complexity and moral ambiguity of his role. His mind was divided. The butcher's mind was whole. The story does not condone the butcher's work, but rather uses it to make a profound point. Inner peace is not a matter of external circumstance, but of inner integrity. A simple life lived with a clear conscience is the foundation for a quiet mind. These principles, right speech, right action, and right livelihood together, form the first of the three great divisions of the Eightfold Path. This division is known as Sila, or ethical conduct. It is the foundation upon which the entire structure of liberation is built. It is the work of cleaning the house, of creating an outer life of blamelessness and integrity, so that the inner work of meditation can proceed without being disturbed by the ghosts of our own making. By committing to this ethical foundation, we dramatically reduce the fuel for overthinking. We stop creating the causes and conditions for regret, guilt, and fear. We establish a baseline of outer peace. With this stable ground now firmly beneath our feet, we are finally ready to turn our attention inward and begin the direct, focused work of training the mind itself. This is the second great division of the path, known as samadhi, or mental discipline, and it begins with the engine that will drive our practice forward, right effort. Having established a life of ethical integrity, a foundation of blamelessness through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we have effectively calmed the external storms. We have stopped creating the powerful waves of guilt, regret, and fear that so often disturb the waters of the mind. The house is clean, the ground is stable. We are now prepared to turn our full attention inward, to begin the delicate and profound work of directly training the mind itself. This second great division of the path is called samadhi, or mental discipline. And the engine that drives this entire process, the force that moves us along the path to inner peace, is the sixth factor, samavayama, or right effort. The word effort in our culture often conjures images of struggle, of gritting our teeth and pushing through with brute force. We are taught to try harder, to power through, but this is not the kind of effort the Buddha speaks of. The effort on this path is skillful, wise, and balanced. It is not a battle waged against the mind, but a wise and compassionate cultivation of the mind's highest potential. To understand this, it is best to return to the beautiful parable of the garden. Right effort is the work of the conscious gardener, who understands that a beautiful garden does not happen by accident. It requires diligent, consistent, and intelligent action. This intelligent action is traditionally broken down into four distinct fields of practice. The first field of right effort is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the wise gardener's preventative care. The gardener knows that it is far easier to prevent weeds from taking root than to pull them up once they have grown. In mental terms, this means guarding the senses. It is the practice of becoming mindful of what we allow into our minds in the first place. What news do we consume? What television shows and movies do we watch? What conversations do we participate in? These are the seeds that are constantly being scattered into the soil of our consciousness. If we spend our time consuming media filled with violence, outrage, and gossip, we are actively planting the seeds of anger, fear, and judgment. We cannot then be surprised when these weeds sprout as anxious and obsessive thoughts. This first effort is a gentle but firm gatekeeping, a conscious choice to turn away from that which we know will agitate the mind and to incline our attention toward that which is peaceful and nourishing. It is the wisdom of not watering the seeds of negativity. The second field of right effort is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best preventative efforts, weeds will inevitably sprout. A painful memory, a surge of anger, a spiral of anxious worry, these things will arise. Our untrained instinct is often to do one of two things: either obsessively indulge the negative thought, which is like giving the weed fertilizer and water, or to try and violently suppress it, to force it out of our mind. The gardener knows that yanking a large weed out by force can disturb the soil and harm the surrounding flowers. Right effort here is a more skillful approach. It involves, first, mindfully acknowledging the presence of the weed. The thought of anger has arisen. Then, instead of fighting it directly, we gently and skillfully remove the conditions that sustain it. We cut off its sunlight. We do this by softly redirecting our attention to something wholesome. We might turn our attention to the physical sensation of our breath, or bring to mind a feeling of gratitude, or consciously relax the tension in our body. We are not suppressing the negative thought, but rather allowing it to wither from lack of attention, while we actively nurture something positive instead. This leads directly to the third field of right effort, the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The wise gardener is not just a weeder, they are a planter. They do not wait for flowers to appear by chance. They actively sow the seeds of the plants they want to grow. In the same way, we must actively cultivate the qualities of mind we wish to experience. Peace, kindness, compassion, and joy do not always arise on their own, especially when the mind has a long-standing habit of negativity. This effort involves the conscious and deliberate generation of wholesome thoughts and feelings. It is the practice of loving-kindness meditation, where we intentionally plant the seeds of goodwill for ourselves and others. It is the practice of gratitude, where we take time to reflect on the good things in our lives, no matter how small. It is the intentional cultivation of a peaceful mind by choosing to focus on beautiful art, calming music, or the tranquility of nature. This is the proactive, creative aspect of our practice. The fourth and final field of right effort is the effort to maintain wholesome states that have already arisen. Once the gardener has planted a flower and it has begun to bloom, the work is not over. The flower must be tended, watered, and protected so that it can flourish and come to its full beauty. Similarly, when a moment of peace, clarity, or joy arises in our meditation or our daily life, the untrained mind has a tendency to quickly wander off. The monkey mind gets bored and looks for the next distraction. This fourth effort is the practice of learning to stay with what is wholesome. When you feel a sense of calm from watching your breath, the effort is to gently sustain your attention there, to savor that feeling, to allow it to deepen and permeate your being. It is the conscious nurturing of our own inner goodness, allowing it to grow stronger and more stable over time, until it becomes the new, default habitat of the mind. This fourfold practice of right effort must be guided by wisdom and balance. This is where many of us go wrong. We mistake effort for force. We try to pin down the mind, to wrestle it into submission. This is not right effort. This is wrong effort, born of aversion and control. It only creates more tension and reinforces the very struggle we are trying to escape. The story of the monk Sona Kolovisa perfectly illustrates this. Sona was a former musician who became a monk and practiced with extreme, relentless diligence. He practiced walking meditation so intensely that his feet bled and stained the path. Yet he found no peace and grew deeply discouraged, even considering giving up his monastic life. The Buddha, knowing his state of mind, visited him and asked, "Sona, before you became a monk, you were a skilled musician, were you not? You knew how to play the lute?" "Yes, Lord," Sona replied. The Buddha then asked, "Tell me, if the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly, would it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, Lord," said Sona, "the strings would break. And if the strings were too loose, would it produce a beautiful sound?" "No, Lord, it would make no sound at all." "And what if," the Buddha continued, "the strings were tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but just right, perfectly balanced?" Sona replied, "Then, Lord, it would produce a beautiful and melodious sound." The Buddha then looked at him with great kindness and said, "In the same way, Sona, effort that is too strenuous leads to restlessness, and effort that is too slack leads to laziness. You must tune your effort like the strings of your lute, finding the middle path of balanced, sustained, and wise endeavor. This is the very heart of right effort. It is the art of tuning our own instrument. It is the wisdom to know when to apply energy and when to relax and allow. It is a compassionate, intelligent engagement with our own mind, not a war against it. It is the steady, patient work of the gardener who pulls the weeds with care, plants the flowers with love, and waters them with patience, knowing that growth takes time. This wise, balanced effort is the engine of our practice. It provides the necessary energy to move forward on the path. But an engine, no matter how perfectly tuned, is useless if it is not steered with precision and awareness. The effort must be directed, moment by moment, to the right place at the right time. This requires a sharp and steady mindfulness. And so, the path now leads us to its seventh factor, the very core of meditative practice, the steering wheel of the mind, samma sati, or right mindfulness. We have built our foundation of ethical living, and we have tuned the engine of our practice with the balanced energy of right effort. We now possess the will and the motivation to cultivate a peaceful mind. But an engine, no matter how perfectly tuned, can still spin its wheels in the mud if it lacks traction and direction. The energy of our effort needs to be skillfully guided, moment by moment, with clarity and precision. This brings us to the very heart of Buddhist meditation, the seventh factor of the path, and arguably the most transformative skill we can develop, samasati, or right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is most famously defined as paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack that simple phrase, for within it lies the entire technology of liberation from overthinking. To pay attention on purpose means it is an intentional act. It is the conscious choice to bring our awareness to something specific, rather than letting the monkey mind drag it from one distraction to another. In the present moment is the crucial element. Mindfulness is a practice of radical nowness. It is an anchoring of the mind in the only time that ever truly exists, right here, right now. And non-judgmentally is the quality of heart we bring to this attention. It means we observe our experience with a gentle, open, and accepting curiosity, rather than with the harsh criticism and commentary that is the usual habit of our mind. The original Pali word, sati, also carries the meaning of to remember. This is not about remembering the past, but about the act of remembering to be present. Our mind constantly wanders off into thought. The practice of mindfulness is the gentle, patient act of remembering to come back, again and again, to the anchor of the now. Here we find the direct and powerful antidote to overthinking. Overthinking, by its very nature, is a disease of time travel. It cannot survive in the pure air of the present moment. Think about it. When you are ruminating, you are living in the past. You are replaying a memory, dissecting a conversation that is already over, agonizing over a choice that has already been made. The past is a phantom realm, a collection of memories, and you are allowing your consciousness to be haunted by these ghosts. When you are worrying, you are living in the future. You are projecting yourself into a time that does not yet exist, playing out catastrophic scenarios, rehearsing for tragedies that may never come to pass. The future is another phantom realm, a collection of fantasies and fears. Overthinking is the act of being anywhere but here. The present moment is its kryptonite. In the actual, sensory reality of this very second, the feeling of air entering your nostrils, the sensation of your feet on the floor, the sound of a distant bird, the narrative spinning, time-traveling mind starves. It has no fuel. It has no oxygen. The present moment is the only true sanctuary, the only place of genuine refuge from the tyranny of your own thoughts. This is not just a beautiful idea, It is a practical skill that can be trained. But how do we anchor ourselves in this sanctuary of the now? The mind is slippery, like a fish, and needs something to hold on to. We use what are called anchors of awareness. The most common and reliable anchor is the breath. Your breath is the perfect tool for mindfulness practice. It is always with you, from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. It is always happening in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or in the future, and its gentle, rhythmic nature has a naturally calming effect on the nervous system. The practice is disarmingly simple. You simply bring your purposeful attention to the physical sensations of breathing. You might choose to feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving them, or you might feel the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen or chest. The goal is not to change or control the breath in any way, but simply to feel it, to rest your awareness on its natural rhythm. When you do this, you are fully in the present moment. And when the mind wanders off into thought, which it will, the practice is to notice the wandering without judgment and gently, kindly, escort your attention back to the breath. This act of returning, over and over, is the strengthening of the mindfulness muscle. Another powerful anchor is the body itself. When you are caught in a powerful storm of anxiety, your mind is in the abstract world of what if. A powerful way to come back to reality is to anchor your awareness in the solid, tangible sensations of your body. You can bring your attention to the feeling of your feet flat on the floor. Feel the texture of your socks, the temperature, the solidness of the ground beneath you. You can feel the weight of your body in the chair, the points of contact, the force of gravity. You can feel the air on your skin. These sensations are real. They are happening right now. They cut through the phantom world of worry and ground you in what is actually true in this moment. This is not about thinking about your body, but about inhabiting it, feeling it from the inside out. We can also use the sense of hearing as an anchor. The practice is to sit and simply listen. You allow sounds to arise and pass away without labeling or judging them. A car horn, a dog barking, the hum of a refrigerator. They are not good or bad. They are simply sounds, vibrations in the air. You receive them all with an open, receptive awareness, as if your mind were a wide-open microphone, recording the symphony of the present moment. This practice teaches you to be with the world as it is, rather than as your mind thinks it should be. It is crucial to clear up a common misconception. Mindfulness is not about emptying your mind or stopping your thoughts. To try to stop your thoughts is like trying to stop the waves in the ocean. It is an impossible, frustrating task that only creates more tension. The goal of mindfulness is not to get rid of the thoughts, but to change your relationship to them. Imagine you are sitting on the bank of a river. The thoughts are like leaves and branches floating by on the current. Before, your habit was to jump into the river and grab onto every single piece of debris, getting tossed around and carried downstream. Mindfulness is the practice of learning to simply sit on the bank and watch the river flow. You see a thought of worry float by. You see it clearly. You acknowledge its presence, but you don't jump in. You let it go. You remain on the bank, anchored by your breath. You are no longer the thought. You are the awareness that sees the thought. You are the sky, not the cloud. There is a story that illustrates the function of mindfulness perfectly. A person must walk along a very narrow path. On one side is a steep cliff. On the other side is a cage, holding a hungry tiger. The tiger represents our reactive, powerful, and sometimes dangerous mind, the habit of overthinking, the raw power of our anger and fear. If the person walks along the path unconsciously, lost in a daydream, they might stumble off the cliff or stray too close to the cage and be mauled. This is a life lived on autopilot. If, on the other hand, they are overcome with panic and fear of the tiger, they will also be unable to walk carefully and will likely make a fatal mistake. This is a life lived in reaction to our fear. But there is a third way. The person can walk the path with right mindfulness. They can be acutely aware of each footstep, of the feeling of the ground beneath their feet, of the exact distance to the cliff edge, and of the precise location of the tiger in its cage. They are not denying the tiger's presence, nor are they paralyzed by it. They are simply being fully present with the reality of the situation, and this focused, calm awareness allows them to walk the narrow path safely. This is what mindfulness allows us to do. It allows us to walk the narrow path of life, right alongside our own powerful and sometimes wild minds, without being consumed by them. When this skill of mindfulness becomes strong and stable, when we can hold the steering wheel of our attention steady in the present moment for longer and longer periods, the mind naturally begins to settle. The mud in the water begins to sink to the bottom. The frantic energy of the monkey mind gives way to a state of profound calm, unity, and focus. This sustained and deepened mindfulness evolves into the eighth and final factor of the path, the beautiful fruit of all our efforts, samma samadhi, or right concentration. Our journey along the noble eightfold path has led us through the foundational practices of ethical living and the energetic, wise application of effort. We have arrived at the practice of right mindfulness, learning to gently steer our awareness back to the anchor of the present moment, again and again. This is the heart of our training, the patient act of returning home from the phantom realms of the past and the future. Now, we must ask, what happens when this practice becomes successful? What is the result of holding the steering wheel steady, of patiently returning to the breath, not just for a few moments, but for a sustained period? The beautiful, natural result of this sustained mindfulness is the eighth and final factor of the path, samma samadhi, or right concentration. Right concentration is the mind's ability to become unified, to rest upon a single object of attention without distraction. If the ordinary, overthinking mind is like a lamp that has been shattered into 1,000 pieces, its light scattered weakly in every direction, then the concentrated mind is like a powerful laser with all its energy gathered into a single, coherent, and penetrating beam. It is the perfect and complete opposite of the monkey mind. The monkey mind is fragmented, chaotic, and many-pointed, leaping from thought to thought. The concentrated mind is whole, serene, and one-pointed, resting in a state of profound stillness. This state does not arise through force. You cannot command the mind to become concentrated. To do so is to create tension, which is the enemy of stillness. Rather, right concentration arises naturally out of the gentle persistence of right mindfulness. As we patiently and kindly return our attention to the breath, the mind begins to enjoy the feeling of rest. The periods of staying with the breath grow longer. The moments of distraction become shorter and less compelling. Eventually, the mind settles, and it rests on the breath with an ease and stability that feels effortless. It has found its home in the present moment and is content to stay there. When the mind achieves this state of unified calm, something remarkable and often unexpected occurs. A deep and unconditional joy begins to bubble up from within. This is a pivotal moment in one's spiritual life. We spend most of our lives believing that happiness is something to be found out there. We believe it will come from achieving a goal, from acquiring a possession, from receiving the love and approval of others. Our entire life is a relentless pursuit of these external conditions. But in the stillness of concentration, we discover, through our own direct experience, that this is a fundamental mistake. The Buddha identified two distinct qualities of this inner happiness, piti and sukha. Piti is often translated as joy or rapture. It is a more energetic quality, a feeling of delight and exhilaration that can manifest as a pleasant tingling in the body, a sense of lightness, or waves of pleasure. It is the mind's joyful response to being finally free from the exhausting work of wanting and worrying. Following piti is the deeper and more subtle state of sukha, which can be translated as happiness, bliss, or deep contentment. Sukha is a profound sense of well-being, a quiet, unshakable peace that permeates your entire being. The discovery of this inner wellspring of piti and sukha is profoundly liberating. It is the experiential proof that happiness is not dependent on external circumstances. It is an innate quality of a mind that is at peace. This realization strikes at the very root of our suffering, the craving of tanha. Why would you spend your life frantically chasing fleeting, unreliable pleasures in the outer world when you have discovered a source of profound, reliable joy and peace within yourself? This experience weakens the grip of addiction and attachment. It shows the monkey mind that the sweet fruit it has been searching for everywhere has been growing in its own backyard the entire time. This is not a denial of worldly joys, but the discovery of a happiness that is far more stable, nourishing, and trustworthy. However, as beautiful and healing as these states of bliss are, they are not the final goal of the path. The Buddha was very clear about this. It is possible to become attached to these pleasant states, to use meditation simply as a way to escape from the difficulties of life into a blissful inner sanctuary. This is a subtle form of spiritual bypassing. The true function of right concentration is not to be an escape, but to be a tool, the most powerful tool we have for gaining insight. The concentrated mind is the ultimate scientific instrument for investigating the nature of reality. Imagine trying to perform delicate surgery on a vibrating, unstable table in a dimly lit room. This is the ordinary, agitated mind. Right concentration is the act of building a perfectly stable, solid granite workbench and illuminating it with a bright, focused, unwavering light. On this perfectly stable and well-lit platform, we can now examine our own experience with unprecedented clarity and precision. The subtle truths of impermanence, suffering, and no-self are no longer just intellectual concepts. In the profound stillness of a concentrated mind, we can see them directly. We can watch a thought arise, exist, and pass away without disturbing the mind's peace. We can feel a painful sensation without the mental reaction of me or mine. It is from this stable platform of samadhi that the deepest, most life-altering wisdom, or paññā, arises. The classic analogy for this entire process is that of a lake filled with muddy water. Our ordinary, overthinking mind is like this muddy lake, constantly being stirred up by the winds of desire, aversion, worry, and doubt. The water is so murky that you cannot see to the bottom. The surface is so choppy that it cannot clearly reflect the sky above. You cannot see the true nature of your own mind, and you cannot see reality clearly. The practice of right mindfulness is the act of building a shelter around the lake to protect it from the wind. The practice of right effort is the commitment to stop throwing more stones into the water. Right concentration is what happens when the wind stops and we allow the lake to be still. Naturally, without any force, the mud, which represents our obsessive thoughts and turbulent emotions, begins to settle. It slowly sinks to the bottom, leaving the water of the mind perfectly calm and crystal clear. Now, two things are possible. For the first time, we can look down and see all the way to the bottom of the lake, understanding the depths of our own consciousness. And for the first time, the surface of the water is like a perfect mirror, flawlessly reflecting the moon, the stars, and the sky exactly as they are. This is wisdom, the clarity born of stillness. We have now traveled the full length of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete and holistic system for healing the human heart and mind. We begin by creating a life of ethical integrity, sila, which provides a stable foundation. Upon this foundation, we practice mental discipline, samadhi through wise effort, mindfulness, and concentration. which leads to a calm, clear, and joyful mind. And from this state of profound stillness, transformative wisdom, panya, arises, liberating us from the root causes of our suffering. With this complete and powerful toolkit now at our disposal, we can move from learning the general path to applying its wisdom to the specific emotional challenges that fuel our overthinking. We can now learn how to use this integrated practice to actively cultivate the wholesome states that counteract our most stubborn mental habits, beginning with the ultimate antidote to the harsh inner critic, the boundless, unconditional warmth of loving kindness. We have now traveled the entirety of the Noble Eightfold Path, a complete and profound system for understanding and transforming the mind. We have built a foundation of ethical conduct, learned to gather our scattered mental energy, and opened ourselves to the wisdom that liberates. We possess the map, the compass, and the engine for our journey. Now, we begin the vital work of applying this integrated practice to heal the specific, deep-seated emotional habits that fuel our overthinking. We will start with the most insidious and painful of these habits, the voice of the inner critic. For many of us, the constant chatter of overthinking is not neutral. It is hostile. It is narrated by a harsh, relentless internal judge. This voice is the master of shoulds and should-nots. It replays our mistakes with scorn, compares us unfavorably to others, and belittles our accomplishments. When we fail, it says, "I told you so, you're a failure." When we succeed, it whispers, "It was just luck, don't get complacent." This inner critic is the very embodiment of wrong view, seeing a flawed, permanent self that needs to be whipped into shape. It operates on the wrong intention of violence toward the self, believing that harshness is a tool for motivation. And it speaks with the ultimate wrong speech, a constant stream of abusive and cruel language that we would never tolerate from another human being. We believe, often unconsciously, that this inner critic is necessary, that its harshness keeps us sharp and prevents us from becoming lazy. But this is a deeply damaging illusion. Fear and shame are terrible long-term motivators. They lead not to growth, but to anxiety, paralysis, and burnout. To heal the overthinking mind, we must first depose this inner tyrant, and we do so not by fighting it, but by cultivating its polar opposite, the boundless, unconditional warmth of metta, or loving kindness. Metta is a Pali word that translates as goodwill, friendliness, or benevolence. It is crucial to understand what it is not. It is not romantic or possessive love. It is not a sentimental or conditional affection. Metta is a steady, quiet, and unconditional wish for well-being. It is the simple, heartfelt desire for a being to be happy and free from suffering. It expects absolutely nothing in return. The quality of metta is like the warmth of the sun. The sun shines on everyone and everything, equally the saint and the sinner, the flower and the weed, without preference, without judgment. It simply offers its warmth. To cultivate metta is to learn how to generate this same quality of unconditional, friendly warmth within our own hearts. It is the ultimate antidote to the cold, judgmental voice of the inner critic. Where the critic sees flaws, metta sees a being who deserves happiness. Where the critic attacks, metta offers safety. It is the radical practice of becoming our own best friend. This practice is not merely an intellectual idea. It is a specific, formal meditation that has been taught for over 2,500 years. It is a way of actively planting the seeds of kindness in the garden of the mind. The practice traditionally begins where it is most needed and often most difficult, with ourselves. To begin, you find a comfortable posture, just as you would for mindfulness of breathing. You can close your eyes and take a few moments to settle. Then, instead of focusing only on the breath, you begin to plant the seeds of kind intention by silently repeating a series of phrases directed toward your own being. The traditional phrases can be adapted, but their spirit is what matters. They often take a form like this: may I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I be happy and peaceful. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease and well-being. As you repeat these phrases, the instruction is not to force a feeling. You may not feel happy or safe at all. The mind may even rebel, saying, "I don't deserve this." That is simply the inner critic trying to maintain its power. The practice is to ignore that voice and to gently, patiently continue planting the seeds. The emphasis is on the sincerity of the wish. You are offering these phrases to yourself as a gift, as a soothing balm. You can try to connect with the feeling behind the words. What does it truly feel like to wish for your own safety? What is the feeling tone of wanting, genuinely, for yourself to be happy? In the beginning, this can feel awkward, mechanical, or even selfish. This is normal. We are so conditioned to self-judgment that self-kindness feels foreign. But with consistent practice, something remarkable begins to happen. The phrases start to sink in. The cold, hard soil of the heart begins to soften. Moments of genuine warmth and self-acceptance begin to arise. The voice of metta starts to become stronger, and the voice of the inner critic begins to lose its authority. But why must we begin with ourselves? Isn't this selfish? Our culture often sends the message that focusing on ourselves is egotistical, that we should always put others first. The wisdom of Buddhism offers a different perspective, one that is both practical and profound. You cannot pour water from an empty cup if your own heart is a desert, dried out by the harsh winds of self-criticism and anxiety. What do you truly have to offer others? Any kindness you try to extend will be strained, resentful, or given from a place of depletion. To fill your own cup first, to offer yourself the nourishment of loving kindness, is not a selfish act. It is the necessary prerequisite for having anything genuine to give away. When your own heart is full of warmth and acceptance, that warmth naturally overflows to others without any sense of effort or sacrifice. The Buddha himself stated this with perfect clarity when he said, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." To practice metta for yourself is to finally take this radical teaching to heart. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. As this practice deepens, you become a sanctuary for yourself. The overthinking mind, which previously found a fertile ground of self-criticism to feed on, now finds the gentle, unshakable warmth of metta. The anxious thoughts may still arise, but they land on a soft, compassionate surface rather than a hard, resistant one. When you make a mistake, instead of the inner critic screaming, "You're an idiot," a new voice, the voice of metta, can arise and say, "That was a mistake. It is okay. May I learn from this. May I be at peace." This is not an excuse for poor behavior. It is the creation of an inner environment that supports genuine learning and growth, an environment free from the paralysis of shame. This practice of loving kindness is the foundational healing for the self-inflicted wounds of overthinking. It is the gentle rain that allows the parched garden of the mind to finally begin to bloom. Once we have established this stable foundation of goodwill for ourselves, once we have begun to fill our own cup, we are then in a position to extend this feeling outward. The practice of metta traditionally expands in ever-widening circles to loved ones, to neutral people, to difficult people, and eventually to all living beings without exception. But the starting point is always the self. As our own inner world becomes a place of greater kindness and friendship, we naturally begin to see ourselves as part of a larger web of existence, connected to the joys and sorrows of others. This growing sense of connection naturally leads us from the wish for happiness, which is metta, to the deep desire to relieve suffering, which is the next great virtue of the heart we must cultivate. Karuna, or compassion, having planted the seeds of loving kindness for ourselves, having begun the radical work of becoming our own friend, we have established a warm, safe harbor within our own hearts. From this place of growing self-acceptance, we are now ready to turn our attention outward. The practice of metta is the wish for ourselves and others to be happy. But what is the heart's response when it encounters the opposite of happiness? What happens when our kind and open heart meets the reality of pain? The natural movement of a heart, cultivated in metta, is the arising of its twin sister, the second of the great heart practices, karuna, or compassion. If loving kindness is the sun that wishes for all flowers to bloom, compassion is the cool rain that falls on a parched and suffering earth. Karuna is often translated simply as compassion, but its meaning is deeper. The word itself suggests a trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing suffering. It is an empathetic resonance, a feeling with another, not a feeling for them. This is an important distinction. Pity often carries a subtle condescension, a sense of you, down there in your suffering, and I, up here, feel sorry for you. Compassion is a recognition of shared humanity. It is the wisdom that says, I see your pain. I know this kind of pain. It is part of our shared experience. I am with you. It is a trembling of the heart that dissolves the illusion of separation. Furthermore, true compassion is not a passive state. It is not just feeling sad about another's misfortune. It contains within it an active wish, a powerful intention to see that suffering relieved. It is the deep desire to help, to act, to do something, no matter how small, to ease the burden of another. This is not the same as empathic distress, a common affliction in our modern world, where we become so overwhelmed by the suffering we see that we burn out and shut down. True compassion, born from a mind stabilized by the practice of the Eightfold Path, is resilient. It can be with pain without being consumed by it. It is wise, strong, and active. The cultivation of compassion is the primary antidote to one of the most insidious effects of overthinking, the creation of the self-cocoon. When we are trapped in a spiral of rumination and worry, our world shrinks to a claustrophobic degree. Our own problems, fears, and narratives become the entire universe. We are the tormented star of a one-person drama, and the spotlight of our attention is fixed relentlessly on ourselves. We might spend an entire day obsessing over an awkward comment we made in a meeting or a perceived social slight. This trivial event becomes a monumental tragedy in the echo chamber of our mind. We become so wrapped up in the intricate details of our own narrative that we completely lose perspective. We are sealed inside a cocoon woven from the threads of me, my, and mine. This self-obsession is not just a symptom of overthinking, it is its very fuel. The more we focus on ourselves, the more we find to be anxious or dissatisfied about. The cocoon becomes thicker and more opaque, cutting us off from the richness and reality of the world around us. The practice of compassion is the sharp blade that cuts us out of this self-cocoon. It does so by forcefully shifting the object of our attention. The practice often begins with a formal meditation. You sit quietly and, instead of focusing on yourself, you bring to mind a person whom you know is suffering. It could be a friend going through an illness, a family member facing a difficult time, or even people you have only heard about in the news who are experiencing war, famine, or natural disaster. You allow yourself to gently touch their reality. You contemplate their pain, their fear, their hardship. You do this not to wallow in their misery, but to allow your own kind heart to respond. Then, you offer them the phrases of compassion, silently repeating, "May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May you find peace. May your burdens be eased." As you engage in this practice, a profound psychological shift begins to occur. By focusing your full attention on the very real and often immense suffering of another person, the volume of your own internal chatter is naturally turned down. Your own problems, which seemed so monumental just moments before, are suddenly placed in a vast and humbling context. The obsession over the awkward email seems insignificant when held next to the reality of someone facing a life-threatening illness. The worry about what others think of you dissolves when you connect with the fear of a family fleeing a war zone. This is not about invalidating your own feelings, but about right-sizing them. The walls of the self-cocoon become transparent, and you begin to see your own life as part of a much larger tapestry of human experience, a tapestry woven with threads of both joy and sorrow. This contemplative practice naturally inspires compassionate action. True compassion cannot remain a purely internal state. It yearns for expression. When you genuinely feel the wish for another's suffering to be eased, you are naturally moved to act. These actions do not have to be grand or heroic. A compassionate action can be as simple as sending a text message to a friend to let them know you are thinking of them. It can be the act of truly listening to someone, offering them the gift of your full, non-judgmental presence. It can be a small donation to a cause you believe in, or an hour spent volunteering. Each of these small acts is a powerful antidote to the paralysis and helplessness that often accompanies overthinking. When we are trapped in our cocoon, we feel powerless. By acting with compassion, we reconnect with our own agency. We become a force for good in the world, however small, and this generates a profound sense of meaning and purpose that the self-obsessed mind can never know. We break the spell of our own narrative by stepping into the story of another. This ideal of active, boundless compassion is personified in the great figure of Buddhist law, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, known in East Asia as Guan Yin or Quan Theum. The legend tells that Avalokiteshvara, upon attaining enlightenment, looked down upon the world and was so overcome by the sheer scale of its suffering that their head shattered into 1,000 pieces. The Buddhas, seeing this immense compassionate response, reassembled the Bodhisattva, but with a new form, 1,000 helping hands, and in the palm of each hand, an eye. This is a powerful and beautiful metaphor. The 1,000 eyes represent the ability to perceive the countless forms of suffering throughout the universe. And the 1,000 hands, each holding a different tool, represent the ability to respond to that suffering with skillful, appropriate, and compassionate action. This is the potential of the awakened heart. It is a heart that is not afraid to see pain, and that has the wisdom and courage to respond. By cultivating compassion, we begin to grow our own 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. We learn to see beyond the narrow confines of our own personal drama and to connect with the shared human condition. This is the great escape from the prison of the self. The overthinking mind is a mind trapped in a small, dark room, obsessing over the dust on the furniture. The compassionate mind has thrown open the doors and windows, letting in the light and air of the entire world. We have now seen how to cultivate the warm heart of loving kindness for ourselves and the trembling heart of compassion for others. These wholesome states provide us with an immense inner strength and resilience. With this foundation of warmth and connection firmly established, we are now far better equipped to turn and face some of the raw, primal energies that often lie at the very root of our overthinking, the powerful emotions that the mind would rather analyze than feel. Our path now leads us into the deep territory of one of the most powerful of these energies, the direct encounter with fear. Having cultivated the warm heart of loving kindness and the expansive heart of compassion, we have built for ourselves a foundation of inner strength and resilience. These positive states are not just pleasant feelings, they are essential resources. They provide us with the courage and stability needed to turn and face the more primal, powerful, and challenging energies that lie at the very root of overthinking. Of all these energies, none is more fundamental, more pervasive, or a more potent fuel for the anxious mind than fear. Fear is the great ghostwriter of our worries, the architect of our catastrophic fantasies. To find true peace, we cannot simply try to outrun or ignore our fear. We must learn to meet it, to look it in the eye with wisdom and stillness. Fear, in its purest form, is a biological survival mechanism. It is the intelligent response of an organism to a genuine, immediate threat. When our ancestors encountered a predator, the fear response, the flood of adrenaline, the racing heart, the tensed muscles prepared them to either fight or flee. It was a life-saving tool designed for short bursts of intense physical danger. The problem in our modern world is that this same ancient system is being chronically activated by threats that are not immediate or physical, but are abstract and imagined. Our fear is rarely about the tiger in front of us right now. It is about the tiger of a possible job loss next month, the tiger of social rejection at a party next week, the tiger of potential illness in 10 years. Overthinking is the mind's way of keeping these imaginary tigers alive. It endlessly rehearses the frightening story, spinning out the narrative of what if, solidifying a future threat until it feels like a present reality. Our fundamental mistake is that we engage with the story of the fear, not with the raw energy of fear itself. We get lost in the terrifying movie playing in our heads, forgetting that we are sitting safely in the theater. The Buddhist practice for working with fear, therefore, begins with a radical shift of attention. It is the practice of moving our awareness out of the conceptual story in the mind and into the direct, tangible sensations in the body. The narrative of fear is overwhelming, but its raw physical expression is just energy, just sensation, and it is manageable. This is a practice of mindful inquiry. The next time you feel the grip of fear or anxiety, pause. Instead of following the what-if story, gently bring your attention into your body and ask, where is this feeling located? What is its actual, physical signature? You may find a tightness in your chest, a hollow knot in your stomach, a cold tingling in your hands, or a tense clenching in your jaw. Your task is not to judge these sensations or wish them away, but to observe them with a neutral, scientific curiosity. What is the precise texture of this tightness? Is it vibrating? Is it heavy? Is it hot or cold? Does it change? By focusing on the raw physical data, you are stripping the fear of its most powerful weapon, its story. The terrifying narrative of I'm going to fail and my life will be ruined is replaced by the simple, manageable reality of there is an interesting pressure sensation in my solar plexus. You are taking the monster out of the shadows and looking at it in the plain light of day, and you begin to see it is far less formidable than you imagined. Once we have grounded our experience in the body, we can apply an even more profound tool, the wisdom of no, self, or anatta. We can ask the penetrating question, who is it that is afraid? As we look for the owner of this fear, for the solid, continuous I who is being threatened, we make a startling discovery. We cannot find one. We find a body experiencing sensations. We find thoughts arising about fear. We find a feeling of aversion to the unpleasantness. But there is no central entity, no solid me at the center of it all who is the victim of this fear. We realize that the fear is not happening to a self. The fear is simply happening. It is an impersonal phenomenon, arising in awareness, like a sudden clap of thunder. It is not my fear, it is just fear. This depersonalization is incredibly liberating. The fear is no longer a personal failing or a fundamental flaw in our character. It is just a passing weather pattern in the vast sky of the mind. When we stop taking it so personally, it loses its sticky, clinging quality. This leads to the third and most counterintuitive practice, the act of turning toward the fear and accepting its presence. Our deepest instinct when confronted with fear is to resist it, to push it away, to escape from it. But this resistance is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes enormous effort, and the moment we relax, the ball shoots up with even greater force. Resistance creates tension. Aversion is the fuel of fear. The truly courageous and transformative act is to stop fighting. It is the practice of breathing into the fear. You locate the sensation of fear in your body, and you gently direct your breath toward that spot, as if you could create space around it, as if you could soften its hard edges with the warmth of your breath. You drop the internal struggle and allow the feeling to simply be there. You are not endorsing it or wanting it to stay, but you are dropping your resistance to the reality of its presence in this moment. This act of radical acceptance sends a powerful signal to your nervous system that you are, in fact, safe. The struggle is over. The inner war has ceased. The great Tibetan yogi Milarepa provides the ultimate parable for this practice. After years of meditation, Milarepa returned to his cave, only to find it filled with terrifying demons. They were fearsome, with snarling faces and sharp claws. His first instinct was to fight. He performed powerful exorcism rituals, but the demons only laughed and grew more ferocious. He then tried to teach them the Dharma, to reason with them, but they ignored him. Finally, exhausted and defeated, he surrendered completely. "It seems we will have to live here together," he said, and he sat down to practice among them. All the demons but one, the largest and most terrifying, disappeared. This lead demon, with fire coming from its mouth, remained. Milarepa, seeing that nothing else had worked, walked directly up to the demon, and in an act of ultimate surrender, he placed his own head inside the demon's gaping mouth. In that instant, the demon vanished. Our fear is our personal demon. We spend our lives trying to fight it, to reason with it, to run from it, and it only grows stronger. The moment we stop resisting, the moment we are willing to turn toward it and meet it with total, unconditional acceptance, is the moment it loses its power over us. It dissolves into the emptiness from which it arose. To be clear, this is not about putting ourselves in physical danger. This is a purely internal practice for working with the psychological experience of fear. It is not about being fearless, which is impossible, but about transforming our relationship with fear. It is the shift from being a terrified victim of fear to being a wise and compassionate host to the feeling of fear. We learn to let it arise, to feel its energy in our bodies, and to let it pass without being swept away by its story. This skill, this quiet courage, is a profound gift. It frees us from the endless cycles of worry that plague the overthinking mind. Having learned to meet the cold, contracting energy of fear, we can now use these same principles of mindful, compassionate acceptance to work with its hot, expansive, and equally destructive cousin, the fiery energy of anger. Having learned to meet the cold, contracting energy of fear with wise acceptance, we now turn our attention to its fiery twin, the hot, expansive, and powerfully destructive energy of anger. If fear is the primary fuel for our worries about the future, then anger, in all its forms from irritation and resentment to outright rage, is the primary fuel for our rumination about the past. It is the engine that drives the mind to endlessly replay past hurts, injustices, and betrayals. It is the voice that screams for a verdict in the courtroom of the mind, a verdict that never comes. Like fear, anger is a natural human emotion, but when it becomes a chronic habit, it is a potent poison, one that a wise person learns to handle with immense care. The Buddha offered a powerful and vivid metaphor for this. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. In the end, you are the one who gets burned. The energy of anger is seductive because it often feels justified. It cloaks itself in the language of righteousness. I have a right to be angry, we tell ourselves. Look what they did to me. The mind constructs a solid, compelling story in which we are the innocent victim and the other person is the villain. This story is the kindling for the fire. The more we rehearse it, the more self-righteous we feel, and the hotter the fire of our anger burns. Furthermore, anger often acts as a protective shield for more vulnerable feelings. Beneath the hard shell of our anger, there is often a soft core of hurt, shame, or fear. It feels more powerful to be angry than it does to feel wounded. So we cling to the anger, using its fiery energy to avoid touching the tender, more painful emotion underneath. This entire process, the storytelling, the self-righteousness, the avoidance of vulnerabilities, a full-time job for the overthinking mind, and it is utterly exhausting. The first step in transforming our relationship with anger is, as always, the practice of mindfulness. It is the effort to catch the anger when it is just a small, manageable spark, before it has the chance to erupt into a raging forest fire. In our unmindful state, we often don't even realize we are angry until we have already shouted, sent the inflammatory email, or spent an hour stewing in resentment. Mindfulness practice trains us to notice the very first flickerings of irritation as they arise. And just as with fear, the key is to shift our attention from the story of the anger to its raw physical sensation in the body. When you feel anger begin to rise, bring your attention inward. Where is it? Is it a hot flushing in your face and neck? Is it a clenching of your fists and jaw? Is it a churning, acidic feeling in your stomach? Is it a pounding in your chest? Without judging it, simply observe this raw energy. Notice its intensity, its texture, its vibration. By doing this, you create a vital pause, a sacred space between the feeling of anger and the impulse to act on it. You are no longer possessed by the anger. You are the calm observer who is noticing the presence of anger. In this sacred pause, we can introduce a beautiful and simple first aid technique from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. It is the practice of breathing and smiling with our anger. When you recognize that anger is present, you can say to yourself silently, breathing in, I know that anger is here. I know this feeling. This is a simple act of acknowledgement, not suppression. You are not fighting the anger. You are recognizing it, like a mother recognizing her crying baby. Then, as you breathe out, you can say, breathing out, I smile to my anger. This is not a smile of happiness, but a smile of tenderness, of recognition, of self-compassion. It is the gentle, knowing smile of a mother holding her distressed child. This simple act of breathing and smiling sends a message of peace to your own nervous system. It communicates that you are not going to be swept away. You are present, you are aware, and you are holding this difficult emotion with care. Once mindfulness has created this space and this initial calming, we can apply the deeper antidote of compassion, or karuna. Anger is a fundamentally self-centered emotion. It is all about my hurt, my rights, my sense of injustice. Compassion is the practice of deliberately shifting our perspective away from ourselves and toward the other person. This requires a profound act of wisdom. We can ask ourselves the question, what kind of suffering must this person be carrying inside them that would cause them to speak or act in such a harmful way? The core Buddhist teaching is that people cause suffering because they themselves are suffering. Their actions are driven by their own greed, their own fear, their own confusion, their own pain. Hurt people hurt people. To see this is not to condone their harmful behavior or to absolve them of responsibility. It is rather to free yourself from the poison of hatred. When you see that the person who harmed you is not a one-dimensional villain, but a complex, suffering being, just like you, the hard knot of your anger can begin to soften. It may not transform into love, but it can often dissolve into a sense of sadness or even pity. And from that place, your own mind is free. You have let go of the hot coal. This wisdom of not taking on the negativity of others is perfectly encapsulated in a famous story from the life of the Buddha. One day, a man came to the Buddha and began to insult and berate him with a torrent of angry and abusive words. The Buddha listened patiently and silently until the man had exhausted himself. When the man fell silent, the Buddha asked him a simple question. "Sir," he said, "if you buy a gift for someone and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong?" The man, surprised by the question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, it would belong to me, the one who offered it." The Buddha nodded and said, "Exactly so. You have just offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I do not accept your gift. It remains with you." With those words, the Buddha showed the man, and all of us, a revolutionary truth. We have a choice. We do not have to internalize the anger, the criticism, or the negativity that others direct at us. We can simply refuse to accept the gift. We can let it remain the property of the sender. This understanding is a powerful shield that protects our own inner peace. It stops us from picking up the hot coals that others try to hand to us. By using the tools of mindfulness and compassion, we learn to hold the fiery energy of anger without being consumed by it. We learn to see it as an impersonal event, a passing storm, rather than a personal identity. We learn to cool its heat with the waters of understanding. We have now explored how to work skillfully with the powerful, reactive emotions of fear and anger, the primary drivers of our obsessive thinking. These practices are essential for dealing with the acute storms of the mind when they arise. But what about the chronic, low-grade agitation that many of us live with every day? What about the restlessness that comes not from a major event, but from a life that is simply too full, too busy, too demanding? Our modern culture worships productivity and action, and it is deeply suspicious of stillness. This constant pressure to do is itself a major source of mental static. And so, our path now leads us to explore a radical and deeply healing practice for our time, the profound wisdom found in the art of doing nothing. Having learned to skillfully meet the powerful, reactive storms of fear and anger, we now turn our attention to a more subtle, yet pervasive, source of mental agitation, the chronic, low-grade restlessness of modern life. Our culture has made a religion of busyness. We worship at the altar of productivity, equate a full calendar with a full life, and wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor. We have become deeply conditioned to believe that our worth is measured by what we do, and so we feel a gnawing guilt in any moment of stillness. We have, as a society, forgotten the profound and healing wisdom of simply doing nothing. This relentless external activity has created a mirror image within our own minds. We have trained ourselves so well in the art of constant doing that our minds no longer know how to stop. Even when we finally cease our physical activity, collapsing onto the sofa at the end of a long day, the mental hamster wheel keeps spinning out of sheer, conditioned momentum. The mind continues to work. It processes the day, plans the next one, rehearses conversations, worries about bills, and analyzes relationships. This is the very definition of overthinking. It is the mind's inability to switch off, a state of perpetual internal motion that we have inadvertently trained through our lifestyle. We fill every spare moment with stimulation, scrolling through our phones while waiting in line, listening to podcasts during our commute, watching television while we eat. We have become terrified of the void, terrified of what we might feel or think if we were to simply stop and be with ourselves in silence. And so, we ensure there is never a moment of true silence. Is it any wonder then that our minds have become noisy, cluttered, and exhausted places? The antidote to this condition is a practice that is both profoundly simple and, in our culture, utterly radical. It is the conscious and intentional practice of non-doing. This is not to be confused with laziness or apathy. Laziness is often a state of restless resistance. True non-doing is a state of alert, open, and purposeful allowance. It is the deliberate creation of moments in your day that have no agenda, no goal, and no required outcome. It is the revolutionary act of stepping off the hamster wheel, even for just a few minutes, to allow the system to reboot. Like any new practice, it is best to start small, to introduce microdoses of non-doing into your daily routine. You might begin with 5 minutes. Find a comfortable chair, perhaps one near a window, and set a timer. For those 5 minutes, your only task is to do nothing. You are not to read, not to listen to music, not to check your phone, not to plan your grocery list. You simply sit. You can watch the leaves on a tree outside, observe the way the light falls in the room, or watch the clouds drift by. Another simple practice is the mindful sip. Brew yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Your only job is to drink it. Feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. See the steam rising. Notice the aroma. Take a sip and feel the flavor and temperature in your mouth. Do nothing else. There is only you and the experience of drinking this cup of tea. Or you can find a park bench and simply sit, watching the world go by, people walking their dogs, children playing, the rhythm of a city or a town. You are not judging, not analyzing, not narrating. You are simply a quiet, open presence, witnessing the flow of life around you. It is important to be prepared for what happens when you begin this practice. It will likely feel intensely uncomfortable at first. Your mind, conditioned for constant activity, will rebel. It will scream, "This is boring. This is a waste of time. You should be doing something productive." The urge to grab your phone, to turn on the television, to find some distraction, will be immense. This discomfort is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a sign that the practice is working. It is revealing to you the depth of your own inner restlessness. Your task is to simply notice this discomfort, to notice the mind's frantic search for something to do, and to meet it with gentle, patient acceptance. You don't have to fight the restlessness. You just have to choose not to act on it. You stay with the stillness, even if it feels agitated. There is a perfect analogy for what happens in this practice. The snow globe. Our ordinary mind is like a snow globe that is being constantly shaken. Our endless tasks, our worries, our planning, our consumption of information, each of these is another shake. The snow, which represents our thoughts and emotions, is in a state of chaotic, swirling turmoil. It is impossible to see clearly through the water. The landscape inside is completely obscured. The practice of doing nothing is the simple act of placing the snow globe on a steady table and taking your hands off it. You stop shaking it, and what happens next is magical, yet utterly natural. You do not have to reach inside and force the snowflakes to the bottom. You do not have to command the water to become clear. As a natural consequence of the stillness, the snow begins to gently, slowly settle. The swirling slows, and the flakes drift down, coming to rest at the bottom. The water becomes perfectly transparent. For the first time, you can see the little landscape inside with perfect clarity. Peace of mind is not something you achieve or create. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer being constantly agitated. The art of doing nothing is the art of allowing the snow to settle. This state of settled clarity has been deeply understood in other wisdom traditions as well. The Taoist sages of ancient China spoke of the concept of Wu Wei. This is often translated as non-action or effortless action. It does not mean being passive. It means acting in a way that is in harmony with the natural flow of things, without inner struggle or resistance. It is the kind of action that arises from a place of deep, intuitive stillness. When we allow our minds to settle through the practice of non-doing, our actions in the world become more effective, more intelligent, and far less stressful. We stop acting from a place of frantic, anxious effort and begin to act from a place of calm, centered clarity. We learn that the most powerful work is often done from a state of profound inner rest. The art of doing nothing, then, is the essential antidote to the disease of busyness that fuels our overthinking. It is the practice of creating sacred pauses, of allowing the agitated snow of our minds the time and space it needs to naturally settle. As this settling occurs, as the water of the mind becomes clearer and more still, we begin to notice something even more subtle and profound. In the newfound clarity, we can begin to see not just the snowflakes of our individual thoughts, but also the empty space between them. We begin to notice brief, fleeting moments of pure, silent awareness. These moments have always been there, but they were previously obscured by the constant swirling blizzard. And the discovery of this inner space, this silent gap, is the next step on our journey inward. Through the radical art of doing nothing, we have allowed the swirling blizzard of our thoughts to begin to settle. We have placed the snow globe of our mind on a steady surface and patiently watched as the chaotic flakes drift downwards, revealing a newfound clarity in the water. In this growing stillness, we are now able to perceive something that was previously completely invisible, obscured by the constant mental motion. We are able to notice that the stream of our thinking is not as solid as it appears. Our thoughts are not a continuous, unbroken river. They are more like a series of stepping stones, and if we pay close enough attention, we can begin to perceive the empty space, the silent water flowing between them. This discovery of the gaps between our thoughts is the gateway to the deepest peace. Our direct experience tells us that our mind is always thinking. The inner monologue seems to run from the moment we wake to the moment we fall asleep, and sometimes even continues in our dreams. We experience thought as a solid, impenetrable wall of sound. But this is an illusion, a trick of speed. It is much like the illusion of motion in a film. A movie appears to be a continuous, flowing reality, but it is actually composed of a series of distinct, static frames. When these frames are projected at a high speed, our brain blurs them together, creating the experience of seamless movement. The stream of thought works in precisely the same way. A thought is a discrete event. It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. And if a thought has an end, then there must be a fractional moment, a microscopic pause, after it dissolves, and before the next thought is born. This pause, this silent gap, is always there. We miss it because our attention has been conditioned to be utterly captivated by the content of the mind, by the drama, the interest, and the terror of the thoughts themselves. We are so focused on the stepping stones that we are completely unaware of the river of silence flowing around them. The great secret of meditation is that its goal is not to create this silence. You cannot force the mind to be silent, any more than you can force a film to stop being a movie by yelling at the screen. The goal is simply to notice the silence that is already here, to become aware of the gaps between the frames. And the most direct way to do this is to shift from the mode of thinking to the mode of listening. Thinking is an active, projecting energy. Listening, in its purest form, is a receptive, silent, and open state of awareness. When you are truly listening, your own internal chatter naturally subsides. The practice, therefore, is to cultivate this quality of deep listening. You can begin by listening to the world around you. Sit quietly and open your awareness to the entire soundscape. Don't just focus on one sound. Allow your ears to be like wide-open microphones, receiving everything without preference. Listen to the loudest sound in your environment, and then, without straining, try to detect the softest sound. Listen to the sounds that are farthest away, and then listen to the sounds that are closest to you. perhaps the sound of your own breathing or the beating of your own heart. The key is to strip away your mental labels. When you hear a bird, instead of thinking the word bird, just experience the pure vibration of its song. When you hear a car, just receive the raw data of the sound, its pitch and timbre. You are bathing your awareness in the reality of sound before the thinking mind has a chance to comment on it. Now, you can turn this listening faculty inward. You can begin to listen to the silence from which all sounds arise and into which they all dissolve. The silence is not merely an absence of sound, it is the background, the context, the canvas upon which the painting of the soundscape appears. Even when the world is full of noise, the underlying silence is still here, holding it all. As you become more attuned to this ever-present background of silence, you can begin to apply this same listening quality to the inner world of your thoughts. You can listen for the end of a thought. Watch a thought come, watch it exist, and then watch it dissolve. And in that moment, right after it has dissolved, listen, what is there? For a fraction of a second, there is nothing. There is only a silent, aware space. This is the gap. At first, it may be infinitesimally small. The very act of looking for it may seem to chase it away. But with patience, you will begin to notice these moments of pure, thought-free awareness. They are like tiny clearings in a dense forest. This leads us to the most beautiful and liberating metaphor for the mind, the sky and the clouds. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your sensation soul, the changing contents of your experience are like the clouds. The clouds are constantly in motion. They are always changing their shape, their color, their density. Some days, the clouds are light, white, and wispy. Other days, they are dark, heavy, and full of thunder and lightning. They come and they go. And then there is the sky. The sky is the vast, open, spacious awareness in which the clouds appear. You are not the clouds, you are the sky. The storms may come, the lightning may flash, but the storm never damages the sky. The clouds never leave a stain on the sky. The fundamental nature of the sky remains untouched, forever peaceful, open, and clear. To overthink is to believe that you are the storm cloud. It is to completely identify with the temporary weather pattern of your mind. The practice of finding the gaps between the thoughts is the practice of recognizing your true nature as the sky. The gaps are the moments when the clouds part and you get a direct glimpse of the vast, clear, blue expanse that you truly are. At first, these glimpses are fleeting, but as you continue to practice, you learn to rest your attention in that clear, open space. You learn to identify with the sky rather than the passing weather. You realize that your true nature is this silent, peaceful awareness itself. The peace you have been searching for is not something you need to create or achieve. It has been here all along. It is the very ground of your being, the fundamental nature of your mind. It was simply obscured by the clouds of your ceaseless thinking. This discovery changes everything. It is no longer a matter of fighting the thoughts or getting rid of the clouds. You realize this is an impossible and unnecessary task. Your work is simply to remember that you are the sky. When a dark thought cloud of fear or anger appears, you can see it for what it is, a temporary, impersonal weather event passing through the vastness of your being. You can allow it to be there without resistance, knowing that it does not define you and cannot harm your sky-like nature. You have space for it all. You can hold the joy and the sorrow, the peace and the turmoil with an unshakable equanimity. Just as the sky holds both the storm and the sunshine, this is the ultimate freedom. It is the shift from being a prisoner of the mind's content to resting as the peaceful context of awareness itself. We have now journeyed through the entire path of practice, from ethics to concentration to wisdom, from cultivating a kind heart to facing our deepest fears. We have arrived at this profound realization of our own spacious, silent nature. The final step on our journey is to integrate this understanding into a new way of living, a new way of being in the world, where we are no longer the victim of our own mind, but its calm, compassionate, and silent observer. Our journey together has been a deep and comprehensive exploration. We have walked the entirety of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have cultivated the boundless states of the heart. We have faced the primal energies of fear and anger, and we have learned to find the silent spaces between our own thoughts. We have, in effect, gathered all the tools, studied the map, and trained ourselves for the inner voyage. The final and most important step is the integration of all these elements into a new and seamless way of being in the world. This is not another practice to be added on top, but rather the beautiful natural result of all the work that has come before. It is the emergence of a new identity, a new center of gravity for our consciousness, the silent observer. The most profound change that occurs through this path is not that the mind stops thinking. The mind is a thought-generating organ. That is its nature. The clouds will always form in the sky. The great shift is in our relationship to our thoughts. Before this journey, we were prisoners. We were trapped inside the noisy, chaotic cell of our own mind, believing that its frantic voice was our own. We were completely identified with the thoughts, believing every story, feeling every imagined threat, and suffering every self-inflicted judgment as if it were an absolute truth. We were the storm cloud, believing ourselves to be the turbulence and the darkness. Now, after our long training, we have stepped out of the cell. We have become the compassionate warden who can observe the habits of the prisoner with kindness and understanding. We have become the silent observer. This transformation is the culmination of all our efforts. Our practice of ethical living, sila, created a clean, stable environment, free from the external agitations of guilt and regret. Our training in mental discipline, samadhi, gave us the tools of mindfulness and concentration, which acted like a steady camera, allowing us to see the workings of our mind without being constantly shaken and blurred. And our cultivation of wisdom, panya, provided the clear lens for this camera, revealing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all our thoughts, which robbed them of their power to command us. Our cultivation of loving kindness, metta, gave us the warmth to look upon our own mind without harshness, and our practice of compassion, karuna, broke the spell of self-obsession. All these streams now flow into the great, calm river of this new identity. What does it feel like to live as the silent observer? It feels like spaciousness. Before, our minds were cluttered, cramped, and noisy. Now, there is a sense of inner space, a quiet background that is always present, no matter what is happening on the surface. When a thought of worry about the future arises, the observer simply notes it. Ah, here is worry. Here is a story about the future. There is no immediate panic, no frantic rush to believe the story or to solve the imagined problem. The thought is seen clearly as just thata thought. It is a cloud passing through the vast, open sky of your awareness. It is allowed to be there, and it is allowed to pass. The peace of the sky is not disturbed by the passing of a cloud. There is also a sense of gentle amusement and deep familiarity. The overthinking mind, with its dramatic tendencies and its favorite recurring stories, is like an old acquaintance. You know its habits so well. When a spiral of self-criticism begins to rev its engine, you recognize the sound immediately. Instead of being hijacked by it, you can offer it a small, knowing smile. Ah, there you are again, my old friend, the inner critic. I see you. I hear you. This smile is not one of condescension, but of deep, compassionate recognition. By greeting the habit with this light and knowing touch, you rob it of its dark, heavy power. It cannot thrive in the light of friendly awareness. The old patterns may still arise out of habit, but they no longer have the power to define your reality. They are like echoes in a vast, empty hall, fading as soon as they appear. This way of being is perfectly illustrated in the classic Zen allegory of the 10 bulls, or the ox herding pictures. In this series of 10 images, a young herdsman represents the practitioner, and a powerful ox represents our wild, untamed mind, or our true nature. In the beginning, the herdsman is lost, and the ox is nowhere to be found. We are completely unaware of the true nature of our own mind. Then, he discovers the tracks of the ox. This is the first intellectual understanding of the path. Next comes a great struggle. He finds the ox and must wrestle it with a rope. The ox is powerful and unruly, pulling him in every direction. This represents the difficult, disciplined practice of mindfulness, the struggle to tame the wild monkey mind. It is a period of great effort and diligence. Gradually, through patient and skillful practice, the ox becomes more gentle. It begins to follow the herdsman. This is the stage where our mind becomes workable, where concentration deepens and peace begins to dawn. But the culmination of the journey is depicted in the later images. In one, the herdsman is peacefully riding on the back of the ox, playing a flute as he heads home. There is no more struggle. There is no more rope. He is no longer fighting his mind. He is in perfect, harmonious accord with it. The mind, once his greatest adversary, has become his peaceful and powerful companion. He guides it with the effortless music of his wisdom. This image is the perfect portrait of a person living as the silent observer. They have tamed the wild energy of their own mind, not by breaking its spirit, but by understanding it and making friends with it. It is vital to understand that this is not a static destination, a final goal after which the work is finished. It is a living, breathing, and continuous practice. The herdsman must still live with and care for the ox. The silent observer must still tend to the garden of the mind. Life will continue to present challenges, and the clouds will continue to gather. The difference is that we now have the tools, the perspective, and the deep inner refuge of our own spacious awareness. The peace we have found is not dependent on having a life free of problems, but on our ability to meet those problems with a mind that is free. The ultimate fruit of this long journey is not that you have vanquished your thoughts, but that you have realized you are infinitely more vast than they are. The beauty of the path is not found in arriving at a final destination, but in the quality of profound peace and freedom you bring to each and every step of the journey from this moment on. We began our journey together in the dark, in the profound loneliness of 3 in the morning, a prisoner to the frantic, looping symphony of an overthinking mind. We felt trapped, exhausted, and believed the noise of our thoughts was the very essence of who we were. From that place of suffering, we embarked on a path of discovery. We gave a name to our tormentor, meeting the restless monkey mind and observing its habits of craving and dissatisfaction. We found the courage to face the Buddha's first noble truth, acknowledging the reality of our mental suffering, not as a personal failure, but as a shared human condition. This diagnosis gave us clarity, and the second noble truth gave us hope, revealing that the cause of our suffering was not life itself, but our own clinging mind. With this new understanding, we set foot upon the Noble Eightfold Path. We learned to see the world and our own minds through the lens of right view, to plant the seeds of peace with right intention, and to heal our world with the gentle power of right speech, action, and livelihood. We tuned the instrument of our mind with the balanced energy of right effort, and with right mindfulness, we learned to anchor ourselves in the calm sanctuary of the present moment. This patient, sustained practice led us to the deep stillness of right concentration, allowing the muddy waters of the mind to finally settle. We then used this newfound clarity and strength to cultivate the boundless heart of loving kindness and compassion, and to face the great inner demons of fear and anger with wisdom and acceptance. we discovered the profound art of doing nothing, and in that stillness, we found the silent gaps between our thoughts, realizing, at last, that we are not the passing clouds, but the vast, eternal sky. This long journey brings us to a single, simple, and liberating truth. The peace you have been searching for does not lie in a silent mind or a life free of problems. It is not a distant destination you must struggle to reach. True and lasting peace is the natural state of your own awareness. It is the silence that was present before the thought arose, and the silence that remains after it has passed. It is the spaciousness of the sky that is untroubled by the passing weather. The goal was never to eliminate the clouds, but to realize that you are the sky. Peace is not an achievement, it is a homecoming. It is the simple, profound act of resting in your own true nature. You now have the map, the tools, and the understanding. The path is clear. Know that this is a gentle practice, a lifelong journey of cultivation, not a race to a finish line. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. When the mind wanders, as it will, simply and gently guide it back. Each time you notice a thought without getting lost in it, that is a moment of freedom. Each time you choose a kind intention over a harsh one, that is a victory. Each breath you take with full awareness is a step toward home. The power to transform your mind and to live with profound inner peace does not belong to ancient masters or distant sages. It belongs to you. It is present in this very moment. It is waiting for you in the stillness, beneath the noise,